welcome back to PA Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Coach AK. How we doing?
So good. How are you?
I'm good. As I've mentioned off air to you just now, the first conversation that we had, um, I'm still digesting it. As we're going, it was such like a it was a deep dive when I didn't expect it to go that deep. So I'm really excited to speak today and sort of get into what we were talking about. But before that happens, if you let everyone know who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are. As a strength coach and a business owner, my time is quite limited. My favorite part about being a coach is the fact that I get to interact with athletes and be with athletes and really coach them. That's why I use TeamBuildr. I remember the days of searching for exercises, manually typing them in, and spending hours on spreadsheets and organizing my programs. This tends to be quite tedious and a lot of time consuming, which meant that I wasn't able to coach as much. So now for my business, TeamBuildr is a non-negotiable. It's an all-in-one programming platform that lets you create and deliver workouts to your athletes just in a few clicks. With TeamBuildr, I can customize programs, track athletes' progress in real time, and generate performance reports. My athletes get full ownership of their progress and can even share feedback on how they felt the session's going. Having this in place actually gives me more time to coach and be with my athletes. If you're ready to take your next step in your programming, give more time to your athletes, head over to teambuildr.com and use promo code PAChalkup, that's PACHALQUP, and start your 30-day free trial.
Absolutely. My name is Ashley Kowalewski. If you want to go through the whole thing, I go by and have gone by AK professionally for quite a while, mostly because of how I started my career. I mean, I went by that in college. I threw javelin at the University of Oklahoma, and everybody there called me AK too. But then I got to University of Michigan during my first college gig and walked into a fellowship there. And my mentor, Ashley Jackson, is or was also a strength coach there at the time. So she said, "You're not going to go by Ashley. I'm Ashley." And so AK it was. And so I don't think there was a single person or athlete there that knew my name was Ashley. Truly, it was AK all the time. And that's just persisted. So that was kind of the beginning of my career. And it's gone from then on out as AK. Went from University of Michigan, fought through COVID to get to Arizona. Was at Arizona for a few years. Went to Mizzou briefly, and then I'm here. This is me. This is my second year at LSU, and I've got volleyball and women's tennis. And to be honest, I am where I am because of the connections that I've made, the people that know me, that know the way I work, know how I want to work, and have supported me in that. I am one of those people that I don't work, like I don't live to work. I work to live. So I think for me, it's really important in my own life finding balance so that I can stay passionate about my work. And I'm incredibly supported in that here at LSU. So it's been a real honor to be able to work with these athletes and these coaches at the highest level and to continue to learn because I have time that I can learn and that I want to learn and that I get to have these conversations with other people and go to conferences and go to clinics and continue to stay hungry and stay passionate and stay curious. And I think that's kind of led me to where I am now and truly has led us into the conversations that we've had because my curiosity has pulled me into different methodologies of training and different implementations of principles that are pretty common across the board. But we know that principles and methods are very different, right? It's one thing to have an idea of something. It's another thing to enact it and to truly be able to execute a method in a way that brings about the results that are desired. So happy to be here. Excited to be on this podcast with you.
100%. And I think this is one thing that we were talking about is like it's the idea of what are methodologies and what are principles. And again, we talked about the principles being like, okay, we're looking at all the methodologies, but like what are we picking from each and what can it do to benefit us and how we're coaching the athletes that's right in front of me.
Yeah.
Um Obviously you've got a couple you've had the experience of working with a couple different sports and you're now ILSU. How's that sort of? I know that you mentioned that you've got volleyball and they're currently off season, but that's also your busiest. If you just go through like the different demands that you're under and how you work around it.
Sure. Well, so volleyball's off season. I'm very fortunate to have coaches who are incredibly bought in and athletes who are, I mean, I've created buy-in. I created buy-in in the last off season, right? That's, I think, a majority of the time when we can actually get the best work in. So that's why I say it's the busiest time, right? It's not necessarily that season isn't busy because they're bouncing all over the place and traveling and doing whatever. And yeah, that's demanding and that's time consuming, but we're not actually training a ton. So I get less reps in, right? Less touches. We don't microdose or anything. My coach is she enjoys having the hour-long session at the end of the day. Like it's one of those things that I have to manage a lot of things during season, but we don't get a lot of good work in, to be honest. And the work that we do get in, incredibly intentional. But then I look to the off season where I actually get to plan, right? I do have them 4 days a week. And I offer up, I believe in capacity work. I believe in baseline capacity work. And I offer up those sessions outside of my normal hours. So I have the athletes Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for an hour. We lift, we train, we condition. And then Wednesdays and Saturdays are my open hour days, right? I don't go all day. I have a 2 to 3 hour block where I'll have athletes come in and work on their capacity, right? We'll literally just work baseline type stuff, whether it is an incline treadmill walk, whether it's a low and slow bike, whether they go out, pop a weight vest on and take a walk. Increasing those things is just time that we don't have time for, right? It's stuff we don't have time to do in the sessions that we have time allotted for. But to backtrack off of that, 4 days a week is great. I can do a traditional split,
Mhm.
right? And I do, because that's how I'm going to get the most work in and the biggest bang for my buck. I'm not going to go total body every day. We open up the week with a low body day on Mondays. We get a lot of good volume in, right? A lot of really good intentional reps. Now I bucket the athletes, so their first blocks look very different. I force velocity profile everybody because I'm very fortunate to have 16 athletes and the equipment to do so. So I do, right? And
Mhm.
anything and everything that I test them in, it's going to be incredibly important to me that that's useful immediately, and can transfer into their training immediately. So we open that up on Mondays, and then Tuesday they come in and we have an upper body day. That's what we did today, all upper, and then that takes about 40 minutes. So the last 20 minutes of my Tuesday session, we condition, and we do that circuit style. Right? They're volleyball players. They're not runners. We're exacerbating injury for the most part when you just put them on a hard surface and have them run. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just not for me. It's not for the group that I have. So we circuit and we circuit train pretty intently. It's a 30-30. It's really 30 seconds on, and it ends up only being about 15 seconds of rest that I give them because it's no longer than about 12 total minutes running, maybe 15, depending on what we look like. But it's great. I love slide board conditioning. Like we do a lot of
Mhm.
things that are lower impact but very high intent, right? And then, like I said, Wednesday, capacity day, recovery day, they come in, have some of them go walk in the pool, whatever, right? I don't care. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. It's a feel good day for them for the most part, but I do dictate how they recover, right?
Yeah.
Cold does not happen before sessions with me. That's a whole nother conversation we can get into, but it limits your power outputs.
Mhm.
So Thursday, Friday, we go right back. Low body Thursday. Friday, they come in, we do upper body. We hit our conditioning, and then Friday's always competitions. I split them into two teams at the beginning of the semester. And to keep that alive, to be competing in something that's not volleyball, has done incredible things. It drives intent, it makes them go hard. I mean, they're just constantly competing. And so I look to raise the bar in other ways, right? It's not always just physical. Sometimes it's mental. Sometimes it's being put in difficult situations and having to work your way out of it. And I have time to do that in the off season. So that's part of what I really enjoy working with that team is that I'm given the leeway to do that. Also get the chance to kind of mess around with their pre-practice warm-ups, their pre-practice routines. I am not a warm-up coach, right? Sometimes I have to be, but I don't offer to go over and put them through a dynamic warm-up so they can go through their hour-long individual, right? They do that. They know that. I spend the first week teaching them those things
Mhm.
and we create ownership. And then I am able to break it down farther and give them individualized warm-ups to do. So each one of them has a sheet. It's beautifully laminated and it has on their required prep. Each one of them has 4 to 6 exercises for them that is required because again, they are an individual. Just because they need it doesn't mean the middle next to them, the libero in the middle don't necessarily need the same thing. So I'm able to have the time to break those things down, go watch them for a little while, understand the way they move, maybe what deficits they have. I can correlate to the things that I see in the weight room or their power outputs or whatever it is and make a change and put that in their hands to do the exact same thing, to change it for themselves. Um, Sometimes they walk in the gym and don't warm up and I get to hear about it and I get to chew ass. Like there are times that happens. But it's great because I have time to do what I need to do and have the opportunity to give them a better product at the end of the day because I'm not just held to sit in practice for 2 hours, or whatever it is right now. They're not even practicing that long, but
Mhm.
it's pretty neat. And I really enjoy our off season because we do get a significant amount of work in. I'm able to communicate to them that their jump heights are going to go down, right? Like, here's the
Mhm.
goal of the off season, right? This is the time I get to build you. This is the time I get to truly, I mean, I'm going to break you, right? I'm going to break you
Mhm.
down. We're going to look at true volume accumulation, real like stuff that you don't get to do normally. We're going to
Mhm.
accumulate a massive amount of volume and understand that that is to keep you healthy, rolling through the craziness that is our preseason and our season, right? They jump right in August. All of a sudden, they come back from summer where they're training with me and maybe playing volleyball an hour, maybe a day. And all of a sudden, they're having 6 hours of volleyball every day because they have a 4 hour team practice. They train with me and then they go to a 2 hour individual. So knowing that they are building the base for what is to come has helped me produce a lot of buy-in and
Mhm.
a little less frustration when all of their performance metrics seemingly tank, right?
Yep.
And so it's a good time. I gotta say, I enjoy the off season tremendously.
I like what you've just said with you're going to break them and you're going to like their performance is going to traditionally dip
Mhm,
because and again I mentioned the presentation I did for the Italian Strength and Conditioning Association.
mhm,
And one of my things that I said was you need to think this preseason or like off season as like building an armor around your athlete.
yeah,
Like that's your only time to make sure that they stay as healthy and strong throughout their season as they possibly can. So if that means again they're not training as much, so we can increase that load and that percentages of how many reps, how many sets they do because they don't have that much demand on their sport. So if we can beast them, let's fucking go.
I mean, it's one of those things that they hate because I mean,
Mhm.
I'm still looking at those metrics, right? I don't approach jump them every week. I don't counter movement them. I don't force plate them every week, but I sprinkle it in there accordingly. It ends up being about every other week where I'm doing one or the other. And they will get frustrated every time, no matter how much I remind them. Hey guys, like this is the time when your counter movement jump height, unfortunately, is going to drop, right?
Mhm.
Because that's not the goal right now, right? The goal is for you to be jumping your highest in September, October, and November, right? On into December, God willing. But that's where it comes down into tracking and load management that has become the most valuable for me as somebody in high performance. No, if we're just constantly trying to raise that number, and I think that's the problem I have with a lot of people that get on and spout this whole vertical, oh, I can make your vertical go up however many inches. Yeah, me too. Like if you want to do it right now, like we can do that. We can take you from a, 13-inch to a 19-inch, no problem. But what, when and why, right? Why are we doing it? And so, and what is it going to do to you on the back end? What's that doing to your tendons and your elasticity, right? Is that actually going to mess you up? Because now you don't have the strength to handle the landings off of these crazy things. What are we actually looking at doing here? Then you start going playing a ton of volleyball and they're jumping like crazy and compounding fatigue or whatever it is ends up making everything look worse in the long run, right? So I would
Mhm.
rather build them up. Like I said, the volume accumulation comes into play so much more and not necessarily linearly. I like to undulate the week, right? I like to fill different buckets. I like to make sure that we're touching a little bit of everything, but in volumes that make sense, right? And then
Mhm.
we can progress from there. And I think the coolest thing for me has been using monitoring systems in the gym. Like I use Connexon. I don't think there's one perfect monitoring system, but that allows me to see on average, right, how many high intensity jumps they're getting. I can set the bands, right? It's kind of like catapult and the distance metrics, but it's an IMU unit to where I can set bands and see relatively where they're hitting these high end jumps or if they're hitting jumps consistently over 75% or if they're not. And then taking that and understanding that I can translate that over to what I'm doing and how I'm training and communicate with the coaches. Hey, we're taking a ton of jumps in it, or these girls are taking a ton of swings or whatever it is. And we're almost at our threshold for like the top end. Can we pull that back a little bit? And they listen. And that's all credit to the coaching staff because they listen, they take in the information that I'm able to give them. And these athletes, I mean, the athletes that I saw all fall that were with me all summer. I mean, all of them were with me almost all summer. And our jump heights were pretty normalized up until September. And then I told them, I was like, we're about to crank. Like, we're about to go. And they're like, yeah,
Mhm.
whatever. Okay. Like, okay. Because at that point, I'm not doing much with them. Right. But the intentionality of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it is so precise. And then it's same with their warm ups in the gym. Right. Those change. I change
Mhm.
those up to fit what I need. And I mean, I had 3 athletes whose approach jumps, that's like where they're going to touch when they hit, went up 3 inches. I had one that was jumping relatively, high, 10-6. She's touching some stuff. She was like 2 inches off of 11. She was just touching 10-10 by the
Mhm.
time we finished the season. And these are all athletes that I had to break down, and you had to train them differently, right? I'm not having everybody come in and do the exact same thing because to a certain extent, it doesn't work for everyone,
Mhm.
right? So you have to
It
kind of piece it out and look at the numbers that I'm getting every week and go, okay, like what's going on? How's this kid move? Are they stiff in the ankles? Is this one that has a lot of issues? Is she, super backside dominant? Is this a quad dominant kid that gets a lot of pop out of her toes and her front side? Whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, and then teaching them accordingly and then adjusting their lifts, making sure that I know whatever adjustments need to be made, that it's made per kid and they roll. And all credit goes to them for executing because they
Mhm.
do. They execute at a high level. They listen to me, they trust me. And I've only ever had one kid go back and do her own thing, do it. Oh, well, you obviously like, I don't feel like I'm doing enough with you, right? Which you're not doing very much with me in season. But her whole argument, I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. That's the one kid who never changed. Her
Mhm.
approach never changed. Nothing ever changed. She was going off and doing other stuff, and I would argue probably overtraining. And at the end of the day, the numbers are going to show that when we're looking at your body comp, when we're looking at the numbers on the force plate, when we're looking at the approach jump numbers, when I'm looking at your load in practice, that kind of stuff doesn't lie. So it's neat to be able to see that, to have the technology to monitor it, and then to use that accordingly to make an adjustment that actually makes a difference for the athletes, their jump heights, and then the way that they feel. Because 9 times out of 10, they're not feeling great when they come into me. They're exhausted. So, what can I do to get what I need and then be restorative on the back end?
100%. I think there's a couple things at play there as well. And when we're talking about like breaking them down, we're talking about the capacity that we can build for them. And people will look at like if we're just looking at volleyball or softball as sports, like volleyball, they jump a lot. So people would be like, okay, they need plyometrics, they need jumps, they need high explosive things. But to build those up, you need a certain degree of strength to be able to keep doing that. You need a certain degree of speed. You need a certain degree of hypertrophy. Like these are all things that build that capacity around it. Like if we're looking at just traditional normal physiology, each bucket that we're filling does something for the muscle. Like
Mhm.
strength makes them solid. Hypertrophy builds size. Power builds that explosive reactivity. So like we're building the capacity to do these things better. And you speak a lot about the intentional work, and I think that kind of plays into it because you're meaning to do what you're doing so that they can have this greater outcome. And for those that don't realize how big a 3 inch increase on jump performance is, at the elite level, if you get 0.1% increase, that's fucking huge in performance.
Yeah.
Like that could literally be in the if we're talking about Olympics, last place to first place.
Mm.
Like a 1% increase just in performance is fucking huge.
Yeah. And again, like that's it's this amount of buy-in and like it's not always just the fact that oh, this kid's just jumping out the gym, right? Her proprioception is better. She's able to move better, right? So maybe she was capable of hitting that 10-3 approach, but she's only ever hit 10 because she doesn't move well or her timing is off or whatever it is. So how can I look at that and not just assume that the jump height is the only thing that's increased? It's not, right? Sometimes it's
Mhm.
proprioception. Sometimes it's just it is the total awareness of
Different
how to
quality.
do the jump. Yeah. And so it's cool because it's no matter what, they're going to jump their highest on the court. If they're chasing a ball down there and somebody's going up after a huge block or a huge ball, they're gonna perform even better out there. Like we love to compete and we love throwing up they love to approach. Like I tell them too. I'm like, you only get 3. Like that's it. And then when we're in season, they only get 2. Like I don't allow a ton of it.
Mhm.
And they're just, oh, please, please, one more, please, like, please, they can't just let me go. No, like, go, finish the rest of your lift, like, go sit down, like, whatever it is, because we're so intentional in the blocks. And I don't say that stuff and let them do it anyway. No, you get
Mhm.
2 and then get out. And so they know that. And that's, again, whether it's a cultural thing or like just the standards that I set for them, they know that when I say something or like right now, full ranges of motion, that is the tack line in what we're doing. We don't do partial ranges of motion to be successful in the off season, right? We train and I want to see a good amount of strength at length, right? I want to do longer, more intentional movements that are moving through these fuller ranges of motion because some of them just don't have it, right? They've got poor ankle mobility. Whatever, I have no problem. We're going to elevate the heels slightly, slowly decrease that over time. Um, Working through the only partial ranges of motion that we're going to do is when we're working on either their accelerative power or their power off the blocks, right? I don't want volleyball pulling from the floor ever because they're 6 feet tall and that's going to
Mhm.
go straight into their low backs. So we go from an elevated position and we work a lot of velocity based training in. And again, that drives the intent, right? They love seeing that number. They love seeing that number increasing. They love the fact that they can throw. I've got 3 or 4 of them that can throw close to 300 pounds on the bar and still move at point 0.8, point 0.9 meters per second. They're able
Wow.
to accelerate these things and they love it. It's the intent, it's the drive. It's
Mhm.
the fact that we're working on like bracing and really understanding how to be smooth but powerful through these ranges of motion. And it makes all the difference in the world for them to be able to attack those things with that amount of intentionality. And for me to be able to not just keep beating a dead horse when I'm saying things over and over and over again. And they come in and they understand, they're like, oh, I feel good. I feel better. I feel strong. I feel, whatever it is. And again, I'm able to track all these metrics over time. I look at them putting on my trends versus based on where I've been and the body composition things that I look to do. I look to put on 5 to 7 pounds of lean mass on them in the off season. Like that's the goal.
Yep.
But then I look at my in season as well and the way that we trained from July all the way up into November, I had 3 or 4 of them still putting on 3 to 4 pounds of lean mass in season, which is ridiculous. Like that's there for the most part. I would expect you to lose, right? I would expect you to lose
Mhm.
2 3 pounds of lean mass. I had 2, I think, out of 18 lose lean mass, and it was great. They did a phenomenal job. Our dietitian does a wonderful job. Like everybody in at this level is doing their job to the extent that it makes mine way easier and I'm able to produce or able to facilitate. I'm not going to say produce because I think I facilitate it. I don't think I produce these results. I think I facilitate them and I give them the chance to make it happen.
Mhm.
On the back end, I'm not I don't have the magic sauce, right? I just don't have it. But I'm able to facilitate those and to a certain extent.
Yeah. I
I think
always like to say that athlete like when an athlete achieves something is because they did it. They put the reps and sets in. Like we just merely provide a plan to help them succeed.
100%.
So it's it's always that thing where I know a lot of coaches like to be like, "That's my athlete. I fucking did that," and I'm like,
I coached that Super Bowl athlete. Oh yeah, that guy. I trained that guy in the Super Bowl. Shut up. I don't care. No one cares. I'm
"Yeah,
going to be real with you, right? There's a point to which all of those things, like, uh, especially when you're working with elite athletes, right? You've already got a Bugatti. Like
mhm,
you did a little spit shine on it, and you're like, I did that. Calm down, sit down. Like phenomenal for not breaking them, right?
mhm,
That's where I'm like patting myself on the back, telling
yes,
myself good job for not breaking anyone. But I think the way that we go about that and the way that we approach that becomes so much more about them taking ownership. Because I'm telling you right now, I could look at them and say, go bang your head into that wall over there 10 times, and that's going to make you jump higher. And 9 out of 10 of them would jump higher
mhm,
because they're that bought in to the concept, right? And that's them. That's the intent they're putting into it. That's how they feel about what I'm telling them. And at the end of the day, they know that I'm in this for them. This
mhm,
does nothing for me. I love what I'm able to do with them, for them, alongside them. Like it's not me leading the way and being like, "Follow me or you're gonna suck." Like,
Mhm.
that's not it. It becomes so important to be able to build these relationships and to let them know, especially when they get injured, I will never leave you behind. I will
Mhm.
never go stick you on the assault bike or stick you on the treadmill and just be like, "Hey, just walk for a little bit." Hell no. I have already adapted this training session for you, right? We have everything pushed through. I have a kid coming back from an ankle surgery, and every day she's trained with the team. Every day. I
Mhm.
have a kid who can barely rotate because her low back is so her she has bulging discs that are so terrible. She can hardly rotate. Trains with the team every day. I don't care
Mhm.
what I have to modify. I don't care how different your program looks. You will be training with the team and you will be getting better. And they come back to it and they're like, I feel incredible. Or if they come into me, they know if they come into me and say, it's not the day, aka I feel like
Mhm.
dookie today, that they can say that. And I'm not gonna be like, oh, weak ass, like trying to get out of my training session. Absolutely not. I trust
Mhm.
you. I believe you when you come and talk to me. So if you allow me to adapt my program to fit you, then we'll
Mhm.
be successful together. You, as the athlete, do not adapt to fit my program. That's, in my
Yeah.
opinion, that's shitty coaching. That's
Mhm.
selfish. That's you're being unwilling to adapt and change and do your job. I would argue that may sound
Yeah.
harsh, but like
No, I
the
agree.
athletes
I
don't
agree.
adapt to fit you. You adapt to fit
Mhm.
them and to address a need. And I think that that has been something over the last couple years that I have been very intentional about communicating to them.
Yep.
And it just opens up this new path of communication for them to just come to me and be like, "Hey, full disclosure, honestly, here's what I feel today." We make an adjustment, they come back, it either gets better or it doesn't. And if it doesn't get better, we make another adjustment. And they still play, right? They still stay active, they
Mhm.
still do things, and it has made the confidence level go up in the
Mhm.
room, right? All the time.
To piggyback off that, first off, it's become something quite unique about this podcast. We never talk about like athletes' names. Obviously, people can chase out who your athletes are, but we've never like named
100%.
any. And I'm quite happy with that. No one's ever like came on and just like name dropped it.
Wow. Massive violation too. If you
Yes.
mention it, that's a compliance to be coming after you. Yeah.
But the podcast I did with Steph Grubbs, aka Steph Mock, um, she mentioned something, and it's that we need a system to evaluate how effective we've been at our jobs. And again, we can have a winning season, but actually, we've injured a lot of people. So was that successful for us? Fucking no. Our one goal is to not injure our athletes, is to
Yeah.
make them better. Or if like we had a losing season but like everyone's numbers went up, like we need a way to identify how to be successful and how we can make sure that we are doing a good job, not for us but for our athletes. And Coach Mark has this thing where he ranks his athletes, and like you get 5 points for like fucking nailing your weights and going above, or like really pushing, going the extra mile. And like one, if you score one, it's like you barely did what you were supposed to be that session. So when I was there, I delivered the return to play sessions. And one of my athletes that was in my rack was in the return to play program. So I got to see what he did in the rack and off the rack in the return to play. And there was one point where like I expected to be a lot lower in the ranking system because like no one really watches the return to play guys. So like we never really get scored. And I'm like, well, I'm looking at whole performance, whether it's on the rack or off the rack. If I can see that, okay, you're in the return to play program, but you're always wanting to do more, or you're seeking out extra exercises to do while everyone else is working, or everyone else is doing one exercise that you can't do, then I'm going to fucking score you higher because you approached me to ask for more. And he was like, oh yeah, like yeah. So like he's doing fucking fantastic now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't just look at one performance and just say, okay, this is where he is or this is where she is. Like you have to look at the whole approach that they're having. And it goes from what you're saying, where if they're willing to take that bullet for you, you can say jump and they'll ask how high. And then you can sort of fucking go on that. Um, One thing that you mentioned that I really want to get into is that working on full range of motion, but more specifically, full range of motion plyos.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
if you can break that down and give us a little bit of that, because again, I've always worked through full range of motion, so I want them to be strong at the shortest end and then the longest end.
Hmm.
But I'd never heard the full run plyos until you mentioned it.
Sure. Because most people, the first, for me anyway, and this is just something I've started kind of deep diving into in the last year and implementing, and it's going well, right? Um, Positionally, and there it's body weight stuff. It's unloaded unless I'm going like a rear foot elevated deep plyo position, like deep rear foot elevated, um, yeah, jump. There's all kinds of things that we do, but these deep range plyos, a majority of the time is just in my warm ups, right? We're not doing anything crazy, but from a full squat position, not only like is the deceleration component important to me, right? And again, being in control and being smooth in your movements. I'm not looking for you to drop and do like an ass to grass and just like drop it down. I've had these kids just go crazy. They think it's the funniest thing ever. They're like, AK's asking us to drop it. No, calm down, right? That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to explore these full ranges of motion and still remain elastic and bouncy. And so, yeah, there's sometimes we're doing like low pulses, like low pulse squats or low pulse pogos going forward, or we're doing deep range split squats and we're going deep into that position and then we're going through pulses. And so we're experimenting with the lengthened end, right? Of those, it's, I mean, your patellar tendon is at length when you're in those deep end positions. It's not aggressive, it's not out of control. It is smooth, it flows whether you're dropping into a deep squat and accelerating out of the bottom. Now, it's again controlled, right? When they're at the bottom end of that squat, I'm not asking them to stand up as fast as they possibly can and jump, right? They're pushing from the bottom end of that squat. Sometimes they have a partner holding them down, pushing them into that squat, and then they bounce up like a spring, right? So that is my analogy is, a spring, if you barely compress a spring and it bounces, yay, good for you. You do have a bouncy spring. Compress that thing all the way down and then let it go and see how much higher up it gets, right? How much more power is stored in that elastic energy. So again, and that's kind of the concept, right? We're creating strength at length. We're creating a lot of great length tension relationships just in their brains because worst case scenario, you go down, right? And it's experienced a lot by my defensive staff, right? Our DSs in the back. They're low. They may be on the ground. They may be down in that position. They may be in a compromised position, and they need to be able to push and accelerate out of those deep positions. Can't be the first time you've experienced it is in your game. Like, heck no. So we do a lot of doubles, a lot of singles, a lot of assisted at first, right? We have a band. We hook up a light band to the rack and you drop it. You get as low as you possibly can in a squat, and then you accelerate out of that position. And then as we move through the off season, as we move into the preseason, and as we move into season, now I'm not worried about those deep range plyos as much. I'm more worried about the top end stuff. But we're still never getting away from those full ranges of motion, right? I'm never going to forget about those full ranges. They may just be in a more unloaded state. Same thing with ISOs, right? Going those full range of motion, deep squat position, pushing up into either a yielding or overcoming isometric, and then going into the full range jumps. And just it's going to be an experimental thing because some of them they have a hard time if they've had pre-existing knee injuries or ankle injuries, they're limited, right? They just are. But at the end of the day, if I look at them and they're jumping from their toes or they're jumping flat footed, that's not going to make or break the program. Like that's not going to make or break what I'm trying to do at the knee and at the hip. So I can live with that, right? There are certain things I can live with and certain things that I coach around. But yeah, we do deep range plyos twice a week on every Monday and every Thursday. Um, and then same concept comes when in our next phase we'll be doing drops, right? We'll essentially be doing depth drops into that deep range position. So they'll do a depth drop and then they'll hold at the bottom the deepest portion
Mm.
that they can, and then they'll accelerate out of it. So it's been really interesting adding in locomotion to it as well. Instead of just doing stationary deep plyos, now doing forward and back deep plyos,
Mm.
now doing single leg scoop plyos. There's been some really fun things and really great things that we've seen out about it, right? It leads a lot of them it gets them into their hips a little bit better, right? I'm not just looking for them to bend at the knee. So they're getting into their hips a little bit more. stability is always a factor in that. So we've had
Yeah.
fun with it, and I'm excited to see where it goes as we progress through the rest of the off season.
Mhm.
But it's been really good for us so far.
I really like the manual resistance stuff. And again,
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to do and learn a lot of it at UW with Coach Mac, but like you don't know how hard it is until you're pushing against someone else's body weight or
Yeah.
their resistance, and you're like,
Mhm.
fuck. Like like Coach Mac has this great story where when he was coaching in China, obviously there's a language barrier there, but one he wanted specific equipment in the gym, but the translator must have got it wrong, and what ended up happening is all equipment was removed from the gym, and
Whoa.
like two very big extremes. So he was like, "Well, either sink or swim. What can I do instead?" And he was like, "I just did a manual resistance exercise until we got the new equipment in." And it's like, as a strength coach, you get pulled in so many different directions, and you have to think about so many different things all at once.
Mm,
That's like when you're fully able to utilize every tool in your toolbox, like that becomes peak. Because
yeah.
like manual resistance, you can have some really fucking intense workouts just with people's body weights
Yeah.
and resistance one another.
That's one of
Um,
your primers. That's all we almost all
mhm,
we do for their upper body, like shoulder, most mobile joint in the body. So I'm not looking for you to get all these stretches in before practice. We're doing isos. We're doing partner isos. We're doing like manual resistance rows with each other. Like they're doing these things in order to I want to increase the stability of the shoulder. I'm not looking to make you all loose before you go take a bunch of swings. Like that's not it. And being able to teach that and understand scapular control for them and all of these things that we're getting a lot better at, and then to hear them on the back end be like, I'm not as sore, or I like there's all these things that over time when they get into these great routines, like bands wear me out. I get so worn out watching people do all these banded warm-ups. Like yay, that's great, but what are you doing to increase the stability of the
mhm,
shoulder truly, besides just like band pulls where your traps are up at your ears and they're like you're getting it's a bastardized movement, right? And it's out of control. And I look over and I see they're just like pulling on the bands. Quit, like stop doing that. Like, I don't like that at all. We're going to be very intentional about the angles, about how hard we're pushing, about our partners that are getting internal rotation while you're getting external rotation, whatever it is. Again, it goes back to increasing the intentionality of our movements, and we're not just out there just to dance around and look
mhm.
cool. Like I'm the last person that's going to sign on for
um, I've got a question, and I'm really hoping that you do. Do you do med ball volleyball with them?
We not yet.
Okay.
That's something that well, I should say not yet. It's something that's more of like a summer thing for us.
Hmm.
As we roll through and we get into this, we go do sand work, and not for that speed, right? I can play all that. Either the ground is moving, it's not real, whatever. We condition the sand, right? I take them out. It's low impact. It's hard. It's hard as hell.
Hmm.
And then
So
we play.
extra added resistance. Yeah.
Yeah. So we play games, right? Whether it's spike ball, whether it's whatever. Uh, I bring the dogs out, whatever. They just get to play and like enjoy after I kill them. And we run ladders and we
Mhm.
run eights and we run all these crazy drills in the sand. But no, med ball volleyball has not made its way in yet. Um, but med balls make their way into my training all
Yeah.
the time, right? Med balls in general, they had them as part of our circuit today, right? I think that there's a lot of value in learning how to accelerate those things out, um, and control it in a way that's transferable for them,
Mhm.
and see all that. But no, med ball volleyball, I have a couple that I worry about that I was like,
Okay.
they go hard, man. Like they're just and that some of
Intense
them
and
do the
sans.
nails and stuff. And they're I broke a nail throwing this med ball.
See, I like I've never worked with volleyball, but I like that because it's a different way that they can introduce rotational power and um just be able to express explosivity in a way that they're more comfortable doing. Like on from net to the sides and all. Yeah. I've always enjoyed
Wild.
watching it.
Oh yeah, that and I mean, to an extent, watching these girls play and watching them play, and when they come to me, I do my best to stay away from anything volleyball. That
Mhm.
sounds weird, but like,
No, no. So I hate when coaches are like, "Your program is sport specific," because you're not going to get
Yeah.
a fucking sport specific program.
Yeah, I don't
If
even know
you
what that
want to
means.
do sport specific, go fucking play your sport.
Yeah.
But I like the rawness of being able to throw a heavy ball from one side to the other.
Yeah. And that again comes in with like the lanky. For me, I'm that person that I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And
Mm.
the worst thing that could happen, I got some goofy kids and I think of the worst case scenarios sometimes. So that sometimes will hold me back from doing our comps. But we have like this last week, every Friday, like I said, we compete. And so just head, shoulders, knees, toes, ball, right? That was our comp on
Mhm.
Friday. I had some MMA style fights over that ball because I told him, I said, the only rule is that somebody has to end up with that ball. So I had one girl go down, like they both went down and they touched it, and the ball flies across the room. And it's a little, like a smaller girl and a big girl. And she just takes her and she like just holds her so that she can't go get the ball. And I was like, well, who's going to go get the ball now? And so they're just holding on to each other and like wrestling and like that kind of competitive drive stuff. I love, like, I love watching them just light up and compete. Um, and then just any opportunity that we can do. They they'll ask to get on the assault bike and compete sometimes. And I'm like, good for you. I would never ask for that. But like, yeah,
Nice.
let's go. Like, what can we do? So they're fun to be around. They're this group specifically, the only struggle I've ever had is they love each other so much. They're so enmeshed that like one person will start having like a weird day and they're all like, "Oh no, like what do
Mhm.
we, what do we do?" And I would rather have it that way than any other way. They are
100%.
they're so ready to come and compete and build each other up and hype each other up and do things the right way that it's going to end up benefiting them down the road. But
Yeah.
the volleyball piece is unfortunately not for me, right? To
Mhm.
to contribute to in many ways. I like to see the transferable skill, but med ball, volleyball, maybe. I'll let you know if
Yeah.
and when it happens.
Nice. Because I spoke with Cam Diaz, and he does that with his
Baseball.
baseball guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it.
Um, and like he sometimes posts a couple of clips from it, and it's like like he has a lot of games in his workouts, which again it kind of comes back to that
Yeah,
competitiveness.
yeah,
Like
we compete.
you will get your kids to run faster if you tell them it's a race. Like I don't
100%.
care what you say. Like if you have running drills and you're timing them for a specific thing, if you tell them you're racing, like they will try and get as fast as they possibly can. And it's that thing. I don't know what you use for VBT, but like Purge has a great leadership board where your athletes
Mhm.
can see where they are and where they're competing against. And I don't know, that competitiveness I've always enjoyed because it's like you can still be intentional, but now there's an extra element of like, okay, it's intentional, but you're also competing now.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely, and they know that, and it's I think the most fun they get individual points and team points. I have a whole system, and they'll just run up to me like, "Hey, I did this much extra today on, or I jumped this much in my velocity today at this weight that I was assigned. I get a point for that, right?" And they're like, yeah, like, sure, like, whatever it is, but it drives that. Everything about what they're doing, they're competitors, right? For the most part.
mhm,
Every now and then you'll get, a kid that, and I tell them it's not my job to motivate you. Like, I'm here, I'm going to present the information and I'm going to present the best program that I possibly can. But my job is to provide for you, not to prove
mhm,
anything to you, not to, like, whatever, come in here and flex on you. Like, my job is to provide. And it is your job to take that provision and do something with it. And I tell you what, this group, they do. They show up and they put in work. And another coach that I was listening to give a presentation was talking about the way that you engage athletes and, engage, prepare, excite, and then, you have to go back and re-engage them. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I don't have to do that. I
mhm,
never, not this group. I do not have to re-engage them at any point in time. If anything, I have to like stop them and like wave them down and be like, "Hey, like you're in the zone. Like, hey,
mhm,
listen to me. Like I have stuff going on over here." They get to that point and like that's one of the ways that I praise this team. I never have to re-engage them. I never have to bring them back in. they're the same coach was talking about, oh yeah, 40 minutes in, I kind of lose them and they go off and they're looking for their phones or they're looking for whatever. And I was like, I would throw a fit. I would
Yeah.
be furious. And that it doesn't happen. And they stay engaged. They know that we're on this, hey, we've got an hour. And if we're gonna get the most out of this hour, you're gonna do what I have for you to do. And then I'm gonna make sure that I take care of it on the back end, right? I'm gonna take care of you. And they do, and they executed a very high level. And I think that starts with relationship building and buy-in, right? If
Mhm.
they don't believe you, if they don't think that you know what you're talking about, why the heck would they want to do what you got ready for them? It doesn't make sense. But my returners, I rely on the returners to be that voice because the freshmen don't know. They're like, wow,
Mhm.
this okay, cool,
It's a
whatever. I guess
different.
I'll do it. And the returners are the ones that are like, no, dude, like you don't understand the offseason that we had last year. And then almost all of them, like I said, had that upward trend in the fall. And they were like, I'm doing this. I'm doing everything AK says, and I'm going to do it at the intensity she tells me to do it. No more, no less. I don't
Mhm.
need you to ball out all the time. I need you to do what I have prescribed for you. And it's just been light bulb moments.
Yeah, and I think that's also a testament to the way that you'll carry yourself in this weight room, because like some coaches struggle to get that buy-in, and it's not because of they don't know what they're doing, but it's they don't know how to engage their athletes.
Mm,
And like when we were sort of going back and forward, like we spoke about like you there's a give and take in the relationship. Like you have
mhm.
to know how like you can motivate them, like be silly, but then also when to turn it on and be like, okay, now we're performing.
Yeah.
Like I always talk about that athlete where he was like, he hit a huge PR. I'm like, my granny could do that, and she's fucking dead, and he fucking laughed. But like he knows that I was coming from a place of like I want you to do better still. Like you've
Mhm.
still got more to do better, so let's fucking hit it. And it's that thing where again conscious coaching was the biggest thing for my career, and having that early on, I was like, okay, now I like it. If we're talking like, in terms of like values, like I paid however much for that book, but it's more than doubled in value for me because like now I know how to approach my athletes.
Sure.
If I've got a kid that perhaps doesn't like working out or likes to do his own thing, I can maybe try and bring him back to do performance. And it's that thing where the way it sounds like is like they would be willing to run through a wall for you. And that's the fucking thing that you need. And someone present and be like re-engage your athletes, that to me is fucking weird. Because like
Right? Right? I mean, like if you're
if
not
you
here,
lost them, you're fucked.
well, and I don't think that that's right now in this age and the where they're at. I don't think that's the farthest thing from the truth. But I think that to an extent, it's just where they're at. It's the most entitled generation we've come across, right? And understanding that they think that they just by existing that they've earned something.
Hmm.
And it's something that I've had to approach right off the bat that I'm not the same person. Our lift starts at 9 a.m. I'm not the same person before 9 a.m. that I am after 9 a.m. And they know that because this is go time, right?
Hmm.
They have their prep that they go through. At 9 a.m., we start the session. You need to be in their room at 8:45 going through the list of things I have on the board for you. Like there are just those small things that I instill. And while they're doing all those things, I'm walking around. I'm checking in. I'm seeing who's having a great day, who's having a bad day, who had a crappy practice, who had a really good practice. Did somebody get chewed out? Did somebody get their ass chewed by coach? And now I have to come in on the backside and be like, hey, I know that happened, but here you are now, right? How do we stay present? How do I take the standards that they have come up with as a team and translate that into what we're doing? And how do I hold them accountable when sometimes they just don't know, right? Sometimes it's just they don't know. And if I'm constantly, and this is another thing that I think keeps my athletes in specific engaged, I'm not over here, nice job, good. Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect. Wonderful. Oh, hey, that's great. Yeah. No, absolutely not. I'm going to be just as specific in my praise as I
Hmm.
am in my critiques. If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you what I don't like about it, right? Hey, that RDL, your back's rounded on the RDL, your feet are way too wide apart, whatever. My critiques are incredibly specific. But then why would I turn around and look at that same kid and be like, wow, nice job?
Hmm.
Nice job, what? Who cares? Like, hey, I really enjoy that full range of motion that you just gave me on that last set of rows, right? That looked great. Walking through, great. There's nothing wrong with telling them that it looked good, but what about it looked good,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's that intentionality of looking at them and being able to tell them not only, hey, nice job, but nice job what? And I see you. I say everybody's name at least once in
Mm-hmm.
the first 15 minutes of a session. That's a rule. Like it just is, regardless of what I'm telling them. If I'm telling them that I like, hey, so and so, I need you to go get this, this, and this, right? I see you, I trust you, I expect you to contribute to this group right now, whatever it is. That I think is one thing that helps me keep them engaged because they know I see them. Like, I see you, I seek to make them feel seen, truly seen and heard, right? Because I listen to you and I'm going to then, you're never going to come up and tell me something and me not circle back and check back in. And I think that's one of the things that keeps them engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
AK sees me, right? And she's going to come back around. And if she tells me, or if I see something I don't like in their set and I can't figure out what it is, I'll just tap them and say, hey, I saw something kind of funny in that last set and I'm not quite sure what I want to tell you right now. Come get me before you do your next one. And then I'll walk off and continue to coach the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the room. Sure enough, here they come a couple minutes later. AK, I'm about to go again. Can you come back and watch me? Absolutely. Right. And so I think that that's one of the things that we as coaches have to do better at. Me just telling you what I want you to do
Mm-hmm.
means so
Spot on.
little.
Yep.
But me telling you what you did well and how or why or whatever is so much better than an attaboy or good job or nice work or perfect, whatever. It wasn't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a perfect rep. Like, it's just not a thing. So I think that that's one thing that, I mean, my mentors taught me a long time ago. And I think that makes a huge difference. That's something that I teach my interns every day. If you stand
Mm-hmm.
off to the side and clap, I'm going to kick you out the door. Like, I don't want you in here. None of these guys need to be motivated to do what they're doing. You can encourage them all you want. I'm here for that, but you better be really specific in your
Specific.
encouragements.
Yeah. Can you circle back to something you've just said? And it's you. You essentially tell them, "I don't know what's off yet, but there is something off. Come get me before your next set." Can you dive into that a little bit more? I'm
Yeah,
intrigued.
absolutely. There are times I call it my superpower. I'll catch like out of the corner of my eye. I mean, not to hate on our layout, but our layout is not ideal, right? I have pillars in front of me. I've got things I've got to work around. So there will be times I'm on the other end of the room and I'm looking down kind of the aisle and I can see something that just doesn't look quite right. It may be positional, it may be postural, it may just be a lack of intent, right, from that kid.
Mm,
Whatever it was. But for me to be able to look at that and just say their name from across the room and tell them, hey, pause, hold on, don't continue on your set or rack it and let me come talk to you. I'm not going to let something that is off just persist, right? If something doesn't look right, it doesn't look right for a reason. So, like, I'm going to stop them and be like, hey, can you do that again for me? Right? I want to see it again. I'm not just going to walk up to them and tell them that something was wrong, right? Because that's not always true. And I'm not going to, belittle them for something
mm,
from across the room. So, telling them, hey, I saw something. I don't know what I saw, but I want to see the next set again lets them know that I'm actively paying attention from no matter where I'm at. And for me, it's that the want and the willingness to keep them safe, right? And
mm,
if I saw something and I don't know what it was, and then they do the next set, and I think to myself, "Wow, that looked great," then I tell them that, "Hey, that the posture that you have and the range of motion that you're getting on those squats, it's great. I don't know what I saw. Maybe I saw you get fatigued, right? Whatever, and
mm,
I'll eat it or I'll own it." And for me to be able to own that stuff and tell them, I'm not always right, right? I do my best, but I will always circle back if I'm wrong, right? Or if
mhm.
I didn't see something, or if whatever it is. And
Like
that's
showing that
something that
human side.
well, yeah, that, but then it lets them open up to me, trust me, and say like,
Mhm.
okay, like, you know, I'm not right at all costs because that's annoying. Like one of the biggest turnoffs for me in a person in anything is somebody who just refuses to admit when they were wrong
They're
or they
wrong.
misspoke or even just little things. Just hey, you know what? You're right. I said that wrong, or hey, I'm having a rough day. I misspoke earlier when I told you that We had, 6 sets of 4. We don't have 6 sets of 4 at all. We have 4 sets of 3, whatever. Like, there are
Mhm.
just times where they'll call me out for stuff, and I love that. Like, I am here for it. And then sometimes they're wrong, and I get to turn around and go, "Do you wanna think again? Like, look again at the sheet and then circle back to me." And they're like, "Oh, I was looking at the wrong day. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, you're not sorry. Just understand that there's a give and take and there's a
Mhm.
consequence for you opening your mouth." And, like,
Yep.
every single time, right? It can be great, and you can be right, and there's no shame in that. Don't take,
Mhm.
don't internalize that and be shamed. Just know that sometimes you're wrong too. And if
Mhm.
you're willing to call me out and I'm willing to call you out, we're all going to get better together, right? And my ego is not so high that I'm above, like, I
Mhm.
think I'm above these athletes or above having a conversation with them. If something doesn't sound right, speak up. And there are going to be times that they speak up and I go, "Yep, that's what I said." Like, that is absolutely what I said and that is what I meant and that is what we're going to do. And they're like, "Oh, like, all right." And I think that it's just, again, it comes with the humanity of the
Mhm.
situation and letting them know that no, I'm not always perfect, but I am pretty damn intentional with the way that I speak. So 9 times out of 10, they'll take what I say at face value and just
Mhm.
run with it, and that can be good too. But it's really nice to be able to have that open and honest
Mhm.
conversation because, again, I want them to know that they are heard, right? I do
Yeah.
hear them, and I do see you, and I will make adjustments because, again, if I can't if I don't ever put out anything else, it's that to them, I want them to understand that I will always adapt my program to fit you.
Mhm.
You do not adapt to fit my program. That's not the way this works. That's not the way we're gonna be successful.
Yeah, 100%. I also like that you talked about corrections and how to deliver the corrections. I think I'm talking specifically like across the room type situations
Yeah,
and where
happens a lot.
like it's easy to be like that's wrong. No, stop. But like that's going to make them feel shit. That's going to draw more attention to what they're doing. So like again, when if I'm in the same situation, I'll come up to them, I'll turn away from the group and I'll tell them, okay, this is what you did. This is what I want you to do. Like these are the next steps. Because like it would be easy for me to be like, stop, stop. No, you're that's wrong. But like correcting it in the manner that doesn't draw attention to them also gives you that thing of, okay, he's giving me a correction, but he's doing it in a way that I'm not being forced to be on the spot or be embarrassed or feel ashamed for whatever I've done. And I think that's a really important key to drive into coaches. It's like know how to correct in a way that'll make your athletes feel at least somewhat nice about it.
Well, I mean, I think it just goes to the whole, like, back to, like, positive coaching alliance of, like, being demanding but not being demeaning.
Hmm.
Right? Like, that's a real thing. That's you can demean somebody all day long, and then you're just an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
there's there's no 2 ways about it because, like, well, I'm smarter than you, and I'm gonna tell you how everything that you're doing wrong, and, like, no, now you're just an ass. I more often than not am more apt to give a group announcement because
Mhm.
if I see something that's being done incorrectly, odds are it's not just that kid. There's it's probably multiples of them. So then I go down, I crank the music. Hey, guys, just remember that when we're doing, these scarecrow presses, I don't want to see your rib cage flaring, right? I need that rib cage to be held down. I need all the movement to be
Mhm.
done at the shoulder. And the 4 kids that are doing it are like, "Oh, it was me." Like, whatever. I don't care. And I think that having that ownership and that the ability to take what I'm saying and just be coachable
Mhm.
is something that I value immensely, right? In myself and in other people. Like, if I'm corrected, if my boss makes a correction for me, I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, like, other people heard, like, they know I'm being
Mhm.
Nah, like, it's something that I wanna instill in them as, if I'm not coaching you, I don't love you. Like, true, and this is another thing that I right off the bat, because more often than not, who's getting most of my coaching in the first few weeks? The freshmen, the new kids, right?
Mhm.
So, if I make them feel attacked or I make them feel like I only have eyes on them, it's not benefiting anybody. So, one of the first things that I tell them is, I am here to do a job. That job includes me talking to you, communicating with you, coaching you, giving you information that maybe you didn't have before, creating understanding, and rolling through these things in a way that makes sense. And so my big thing for them is, I don't get mad at me, don't get offended. Don't,
Hmm.
clutch your pearls every time I tell you, to make an adjustment. And that's more often than not what I tell them is I need you to make an adjustment, not it's wrong or it's
Hmm.
whatever, right? And that's just the language I speak. Is it wrong? Yes, inherently. Like you look terrible or like, but I'm not going to walk up to them and be like, "Oh, you look shit." Like you
Hmm.
look like absolute dog poo and no, scrap it, move on. I'll make them stop, right? Hey, here are the adjustments I need to make, right? Put the barbell down. I've had so many, just countless interns try and coach athletes with bars in their hands, and these athletes are just
Yep.
standing there like
Uh,
shaking, trying not to put the bar down. And so the ability to separate all those things out and
yep.
just break it down to them and say in a way that makes sense, here are the adjustments I want you to make. And at the end of the day, circling all the way back, if we had a day where I just had to like really do a lot of coaching, which is very rare. I'm usually not having to coach a ton because I spend
Hmm.
so much time breaking it down in the beginning of our phase. By the time we get to weeks 3 and 4, or however many weeks I have in a phase, we're smooth sailing, right? 9 times out of 10, I'm just going around telling everybody what I like about their movement.
Hmm.
And at the beginning, being able to break those things down and tell them at the end of a session, hey, remember, me coaching you up is love, right? Me, if I'm not talking to you at all, you should probably be worried. Like there's probably something wrong because none of us are perfect, right? There are just those opportunities for us to learn and grow. And I want them to take that into the real world, to their bosses, to their spouses, to their significant others, to their parents, to their families, whatever. Because learning how to communicate and especially have difficult
Hmm.
conversations is so valuable. And it's
Yep.
something that like, I mean, I had one strength coach that would just rib me all the time. Just constantly poke at me and, oh, well, that looks like this, or like this. And I loved the dude. I loved him so much because that was the way that we communicated, and we communicated really well. And if I had questions, I never felt like an idiot going to him. But he would pick on me all the damn time. And if I was sore or whatever it was, he'd just pick on me some more. And so again, it goes to the building the relationships aspect that we talked about
Hmm.
initially. My ability to build a relationship with you, communicate with you, see you, hear you, understand you, blah blah blah, translates into the relationship that we have that ends up showing on the floor.
Yep.
I never for a single second worry that one of my coaches come in during lifts anyway, but that they're watching going, "What the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this?" Because they know. I start out every session with the education part of I spend the first 3 minutes just a quick breakdown what we're doing, what the goal of the week is, right? This week, it's week 3. We're past familiarization. We're
Hmm.
past all that. We're now increasing load. It's on their sheet. It literally says it. Goal of the week, increase load. So now you know I want to look up and see you pressing hard. Like I want to see it, difficult things going on.
Hmm.
We're no longer concerned about familiarization with the movement patterns. And again, communicate, communicate, communicate in a way that makes sense, in a way that's digestible, and that they can turn around and they can be successful
Hmm.
with.
I've got three rules on corrections that now that I like do lifting classes and speaking engagements, I always try and tell them, and it's to correct a lift. You like unless it's like very dangerous and they can legitimately hurt themselves, you never like that. That's the only point where I would stop a lift and correct straight away.
Sure.
If it's something like I stick to a 1 to 2 word rule where it's cues. So if I see them doing something, I'll just cue something that will trigger that thought process. I was like, okay, I need to do this, and this, and this. Like I've seen interns just like stop lifts or stop them while they're mid lift and they're like fucking shaking, like you mentioned. That's disturbing the flow, and then that's again pressurizing them. So I like what you said there. Like, yeah, and again, it's all the session has to be smooth.
hmm And
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing too. I think about not varying a ton, right?
Hmm.
There's never a point at which I'm like, I'm going to change the whole lift week to week. I think that there's people that do so many exercises and so much variation in their program across a very short span of time that I'm like, how do you ever hope to see
Build. Yep.
progress, right? Like, so I think that again is another valuable point that they understand the why. So
Hmm.
what am I changing? The load, the volume, or the intensity, right? Or a combination of two, right? Two of the three things. And I think it's been really fun watching them learn.
Hmm.
Okay, like all AK is asking of me is full ranges of motion, right? That's it for the first couple of weeks. Then I'm asking you to increase load under those full ranges of motion. And then I'm increasing the volume with that load. So now we're accumulating tonnage over time. Eventually, I'll drop that volume and I'll keep the load the same, but ask the intensities to go higher, right? Whatever
Hmm.
it is. But keeping those foundational, even if I'm changing one or two small aspects of that lift, keeping it similar or the like something that they can learn and drive that drives that adaptation, incredibly valuable. And then
Hmm.
the cueing goes right along with it, right? Am I providing external cues? Am I providing internal cues? Right? Internal cues are hard for individuals who aren't super trained. They don't know what the heck you're talking about. So can I cue them externally, right? Instead of telling them to like set their shoulders down and back or to breathe in and brace and squeeze their lats or whatever the hell they're trying to say. Hey, my piece of paper, I'm going to put it in your armpit and I want you to squeeze.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, like bing,
Yeah.
like light bulb, and they get it. So it's fun to watch it happen. And for me, it's fun to educate the interns
Hmm.
as to why.
Yeah.
Because the interns are like, well, what if we're talking about
Textbook. Yep.
intra-abdominal pressure? And I'm like, if you use a word that big in my lift, I'm gonna lose it. Like nobody
Yep.
has the time to listen to you be smart. That's great. I'm super glad you know what that means. But that's not what we're doing here, right? Am I looking to increase intra-abdominal pressure or whatever, right? But stop. Like make
Hmm.
it as simple as possible in a way that this athlete can take it, digest it, and transfer it in
Hmm.
3 seconds. And
Yep. Athletes also don't give a shit.
no,
Um,
they still don't.
um, it's yeah, I 100% agree, and it's I think again it comes from a little bit of an ego thing where people are like, I know this shit, so I'm going to say how I was taught it. But it's like, okay, cool, you know it.
It makes me proud of you. That's all. I'm like, good for you. Like, nice job. Like,
Yeah.
that's truly phenomenal. And I think you should, right? I think we should know anatomy. I think we should understand the physiology. I think we should understand stimulating the central nervous system. I think we should understand calming them down. I think we, like there are all these things that we should understand. Nobody needs to know I know but me. Like
Mhm.
it's all good. I'm gonna translate, I'm gonna put it out. I think that the smartest people can communicate in the dumbest of tones.
Yep.
I think that if I really know something, I can simplify it down to where a child could understand it. And
100%.
that's one thing that I want to continue to implement over time. No matter what I'm talking about, I
Hmm.
want to be able to know exactly what it is I want to say and be able to dumb it down in a way where I'm like, this is how and why we train with velocities. The
Hmm.
faster it goes, the more powerful you are. The slower it goes, the stronger you're probably, or, you're moving a little bit more weight. If you're moving really lightweight and it's going really slow, you're not driving with intent. Whatever, right? And that's the way I explain it to the athletes. And they're like, oh, like,
Hmm.
cool. So highest number possible. I'm like, sure. Like, sounds good to me. Here are the weight
Yep.
ranges, like, and learning how to load according to that velocity.
Hmm.
Same stuff. I give them the bands, and then that's all. Your responsibility to figure out where your weight lies. And to be honest with you, bar math is the hardest thing they have to do.
Yep.
The hardest thing. They're like, "Well, I had 70 pounds on each side." And I'm like, "What are you saying? Like, what are you saying right now? Like, you had 185 on the bar?" And they're like, "Oh, like the bar is 45. Like, what are you saying here?" So, bar math is by far the most difficult things that my athletes have to experience.
See, bar math in the US for me is fucking brutal
Sure,
because
in
you go off
kilos versus
pounds.
pounds.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
Oh yeah, like my athletes, like again, when I say this, I'm talking like silly moods and just like having banter with them. I
sure.
didn't know what was going on, but there was an athlete. I think he had. What did he have on? He had close to 200 kilograms, which
Ooh, okay. It's
yeah,
like
it's a decent,
405-ish.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was a decent weight. Like I was like, fuck, but he was
right.
like, like what if I go in the bar? I was like, fucking, you tell me. Like, I don't fucking know pounds.
I don't know, bro. It looks like a lot of work. See, that's the best part about being like having the background that I had is that I learned to Olympic lift
Hmm.
with kilos and I learned to essentially power lift and train with pounds.
With pounds.
So the everything for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's roughly 185 if I'm looking at 80 kilos,
Hmm.
whatever it is. It's like 189, right? Like whatever it. Whenever we sit there and look at it and we think whatever in these weird, like, obscure terms. But then you go to certain weight rooms
Mhm.
that have only kilo plates or only, you know,
On plates. Yep.
plates and pounds, and I'm like, "Okay, that one gets a little iffy for me." But then the worst is when they have both. And I'm like, "Son of a," like, now I don't know what to do. I'm lost. But no, thank God the athletes don't have to navigate that because I think some of them, it would break them.
The one thing I will say is it's even harder for me when there's no colored plates.
Oh,
Like the
yeah, we
color
have all black plates. You would die.
yeah. Oh, North Dakota University also doesn't have colored plates,
Mhm.
and I know someone that coaches there, and, like, anytime he sends me a video, the the colors are wrong. So,
Yeah.
like
Like, why are your
10
plates green? What do you mean?
but, like, the green plates are, like, what you would call the 45 pounds, like, the 20 kilograms.
Oh, no. Green's 10
So
kilos every time.
yes, yes. So,
Mhm.
he sent a photo on the group chat of, him doing a deadlift or whatever it was, and he just, like, had a 4 stack of green plates, but those are actually 45s.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that's light work. What the fuck are
Like,
you
nice.
talking about?"
You got, like, 80 kilos on the bar. Good for you, guy. Like, way to go. Yeah. That's
Uh,
that's
that's the only thing that fucked me up.
That's pretty funny. That's something that I didn't really think about because we like, even when I was at the Olympic Training Center, there's, like, a stripe down like, they're all
Mhm,
black plates, but there's a green stripe, down yellow stripe down the 15 key, blue and then red down the 25 key. So, like, they're
you
there,
know,
but
yeah.
it does make me laugh when you either make the transition into pounds, and they've got, like, the
Mhm,
25-pound plates that are green and the, like, all the 35-pound plates are a waste of time. If it's not a 15
mhm,
kilo plate, I don't want it. If it's a 35
yeah.
pound plate, get out of my gym. But that's
To be
another
fair, the
picky.
the first so the way it worked, again, fucking shout out to Canadian Border Patrol. I fucking hate them
Oh, no. Mhm.
because we're not getting into it. I've spoken about it on the
Okay.
podcast. I've had enough. I'll tell you offline. Um, but so I missed it. So my first session was like, okay, we're setting up 35-pound plate on the bar. I'm like, okay. So like
Sure.
what I think of 35 is like it's just a 40 plate. So I'll
Yeah.
look for like the fucking 20 kilogram plate. Can't find it. There's no fucking numbers on it. I'm like 45. What's that? And I was just it was a kerfuffle. It was a kerfuffle
Mm.
until I figured out what was happening.
Sounds like it.
um, I also want to sort of circle back into warm ups, and you mentioned something right at the start, which their warm ups are their warm ups. It doesn't change apart from like individual warm up things. Can you sort of explain and dive down into that a little bit? Because I
Sure.
think a lot of a lot is missed because people try and overcomplicate warm ups when warm ups shouldn't be that complicated. They should just be like, okay, here's a little thing to at least just get a little bit warm so we can actually perform our lifts.
Yeah. So, the beautiful thing about my situation here is that they come to me post practice. So, from a locomotion standpoint, for me, they're warm, they're good. But if I dial that into pre-practice, right, and I tell you that I give them very baseline stuff to do, I'm not going to come in and waste my time and walk you through freaking scoops and quad pulls
Hmm.
and shit that you can do on your own. You don't need me for that, right? And so half of it, again, is putting the ball back in their court and telling them to spend 5 minutes doing some locomotion stuff, skips, right? I'm not asking them to do anything high level,
Hmm.
unsupervised. Scoops, skips, three-way hip, right? High kicks, whatever, right? Get the system primed so that when I get there and I have 7 minutes, that's like my big, that's the big thing for my coach to walk up and talk to me. Okay, I'm blessing you with 7 minutes today for your warm up. And I'm like, fuck, like, okay, like 7 whole minutes. So I'm looking at the session and I'm pulling back and I'm diving into, okay, I can look at the practice plan that's written on the board when I walk in the gym. What do we need? Right? What do you need from me? Do they need to be primed to take a bunch of swings and a bunch of big approaches? Or are they having a defensive day where I need to prime them in multiple directions? Right?
Mm,
I'm not going to walk in and waste the first 5 minutes of my time with you on a normal schmormal warm up. Do it yourself. And that's something that is big for me because if I can take that 7 minutes and get really specific with you just based on the day, I'm going to do it and we're going to
mhm,
be great and we're going to see a lot better, you're going to see a lot better results right off the bat than you would if I come in and I take you through the same routine every single day. Now, where that varies for me is two places, right? In the weight room and during game days.
Mhm,
Their game day warm up needs to be routine, right? Needs
mhm,
to be specific, needs to be the same. It has to have a structure, it has to fit within a certain time frame. So that's not ever what I'm talking about. My game day warm up looks the same. And you know what? It's boring as hell. And that's fine because they also spend 45 minutes warming up before the game. So their warm up loads are massive. Like I don't need to be going out and doing a ton of specific prep because they're doing it, right?
mhm,
Um, and then talking about the weight room. So when they come in the weight room for me, I have specific prep written on the board. So like I said, you're not moseying in the weight room at 8:59 for our 9 o'clock session. You're expected to be hauling ass over from practice and doing the primers that I have written on the board. Depending on the day, I'm addressing the hip in a couple different ways. I'm probably addressing their T spine regardless of the day. And then I may or may not be addressing the shoulder for a pull, for a press, whatever it is, whatever is the demand on the day. And they have anywhere from 4 to 6 movements that they have assigned to them that they're familiar with. And then they go through, and I'm very intentional about the soft tissue work that we do barefoot.
mhm,
I have a lot of kids that end up with plantar fasciitis from all the jumping and all the things that they do. So I'm very intentional about the way that we get the foot active, right? Get the foot stronger. If they want to lift barefoot, I let them lift barefoot. Just be
mm,
careful.
okay,
Don't be a
yep, yep,
dummy
yep.
because dropping a 45-pound weight on your foot, whether you have a shoe on or not, it's toast,
Yes,
right?
yep,
So I'm just telling, be very cautious. Again, the plyo primers, that's something I'm very intentional with. They go through their primers, whatever's written on the board for me, they go through their primers, and then I take them through either plyo primers or maybe a push pull primer for our upper body days or breathing and bracing. I do a lot of breathing and bracing within the priming that we do because I think that's something that's incredibly under taught. I don't
mhm,
think that people teach enough of how to breathe, how to brace in the middle of a difficult rep or a difficult set or, whatever it is. So we work on those things. And that can take me anywhere from 5 to 10. I try not to exceed 15 minutes because again, what are we there to? We're there to
mhm,
lift, right? I'm there to make sure that they can get the work in that they need to get in with me in a certain amount of time. So
yeah,
that's kind of what the process looks like for me with a warm up. For the most part, depending on the day, the warm up can be pretty similar unless I've seen something we need to address. So week to week, if I see something that I'm just like, man, I hate the way that they're hitting this landmine jerk because they're not actually fully extending. They're
mhm,
not actually getting full, protraction every single time, which is what I want because I want them to hit that most unstable position and I want
mhm,
them to learn how to be stable through it. Then we might do a few more, scap mobility movements in the beginning. We may do some hanging scap stuff. We may do some scap push-ups or A-frames or whatever it is that gets them into the position that I want them to feel. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I approach it, and I put a lot of it in their hands, and I the ownership that I make them take
mhm,
is probably more than I've ever done, and I think that just kind of goes along with the standards that I've set for them and the way
yeah.
that they're able to follow
I
what
think
they're
it touches on that expectations and values that you
yeah.
said at the start. It's like that's fucking key for a successful program. And also like they all have some expectations on you. Like
Oh yeah.
and that's fucking important. One of my old lecturers, she makes her athletes make rules for her and their parents if they're watching the game. Like parents can't fucking coach at the side. That's not what's fucking happening. And if that does happen, they're getting removed from the field. And
Mm,
I think that's key. Like you have to have it. Can you break down your plyo primers and your breathing and bracing and how that looks like?
sure. We're going through and priming for the most part. Like we'll just start with the plyos. Rolling through and going through specific intensities. Right. At first, we're stationary for the most part. We're doing a lot of heel snap downs. Right. We're making sure that we're um, never cranking the intensity first thing. Right. Yeah, I know they're coming from practice, or half of them are, and that they could probably handle those intensities. But I take it back to zero. Right. I'm very intentional on the amount of contacts that we have going on. We're not just doing a ton of
Mhm.
these primers before because then it's not a primer. Now it goes into my working sets. It's leaking into my sets. So going through that, I'll use my one from yesterday um, to kind of be an example. So we start out with the foot and the hip. Truly, a little bit of T spine, not a ton, but they go through and they do a lot of soft tissue work on their feet. They go through and they go through hip mobility. They'll roll through several ranges of motion, whether it's like going front side hip flexor or whether it's going backside and glute 90-90 position, reaching, rolling, whatever. And then we go into our plyo, like we'll transition into the plyo primers after we've gotten through the hip mobility. Um, and that most of them will stay barefoot for these. So we start out with like a rear foot elevated heel snap down. So they're popping up on their toe and they're snapping that heel down as quickly as they possibly can. And they do 10 reps on each leg. Then they step off the bench. So we went from an assisted plyo to full body weight plyo. Same thing. They're snapping their heels down. And it ends up being more of a snap down for most of them. Not traditionally, because I'm not asking them
Mhm.
to get into any kind of deep hip flexion or hip flexion at all, really. I'm asking them to go to full extension and snap themselves down onto their heels. Then they go back through that same progression. And now we're doing little hops. So now they're going into the assisted plyometric. So left foot will be elevated, on the bench, right foot's down, and they're going through an assisted plyo, right? A little hop, 10 reps on the right, 10 reps on the left. They hop off. Now they're doing 10 pogo jumps, right? Which are a little bit more intense.
Mhm.
Last round is our most intense round. We go into tuck jumps. So our first round is assisted tuck jumps. So right leg's up on the bench, left leg is up in the front. That knee is now driving, right? We're going into our tuck jumps. And then the last one, we go right back off. We're stationary, but we're doing tuck jumps. Full force, full body weight, right? Everything's going. We're looking for smooth landings. We're looking for smooth takeoffs, right? I'm not looking for chaos in the air or when you
Mm.
meet the ground again. So that's just one example of the plyo primers that we roll through. And in total, that's 90 contacts, but 60 of those 90 contacts are assisted. So they're not full force. It's not,
Mhm.
I'm not asking them to just roll through, hundreds of contacts that are full force or, 100% of weight bearing. And it's been great. I've seen really great things come out of that for them. And the one thing is they enjoy doing it. They're like, oh, our little bench plyo primers, and they'll run over to go do them.
Mhm.
Another way that we do that, depending on, if we're experiencing a heavier load day, and I need to get them either accelerating the bar faster or accepting load. Like if we're doing our
Mhm.
eccentric
Mhm.
two,
Mhm.
so I'll do like a 1+3 scheme with the trap bar where the first rep is an eccentric loaded 4 seconds all the way down, and then 3 really explosive reps to prime for that. We're rolling through and we've got kettlebell swings, we've got death drops, to a vertical jump, and we've got box jumps. So again, training every area, the eccentric, the concentric only, and really more rhythm, right? With the kettlebell
Mhm.
swings, I'm never looking for them to move a massive amount of weight. It's just all in the rhythm. It's in the shortening, it's in the stretching, it's everything that they're doing to prime themselves to be ready to hit those repeated reps, and maintain a good amount of tension in their torso while they're doing it. Right? You can't
Mhm.
relax on a kettlebell swing and and be okay, right? You're probably going to throw you
Yep.
back out. So again, breathing in the intentionality of the breathing, the bracing, everything that we're doing, and whether we go through the deep range plyos or our high end quarter plyos, whatever it is going to bleed straight into the first block of whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, there was a second part to that question. I don't know. Oh, the
The
breathing.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
same deal. So on our heavier days, when we're lifting, like when we're, in the lower ends of those velocity bands and we're trying to pick up heavy weight, the first thing that we do is we work on bracing, right? Dead bugs, planks, partner planks, right? Partner landings even. Like I'll still go through my plyo primers, but they're shoving each other in the air and
Mhm.
having to learn how to brace on landing. Um, and same concept, I'll put them on the floor and just have them inhale and try to expand their chest and their diaphragm and hold a dead bug position through that. And same deal, whether we're doing like partner Palloff presses to begin, pairing it with a core activity that makes sense to
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
re-engage them and make sure that they understand what we're doing. Why are we working on this bracing activity? And then again, taking them into that trap bar and understanding that you're lifting some pretty heavy weight. I got some that are like popping up into the 400s here pretty soon and like
Um,
moving like 385 at like zero point 0.8 meters per second. I'm like, you're going to see some really great things. But if you don't know how to breathe and you don't know how to get ready and brace off of those things, you're going to hurt your back and I'm going to be fired, right? Whatever.
yeah.
So
What kind of air is that LSU that they're fucking shifting that much weight?
I got some Bugattis, man. That's all I can say. I have got some freaking Bugattis and Ferraris in this group that I don't have to do anything but say, "Here's what I want, and here's how to do it." And they're like, "Oh, that's it?" Boom, and they go.
Mm,
Right? Give them the opportunity and just I do very little explanation when it comes to those athletes. They're like, "Yeah, that kind of hurts my hands a little, but," and then go up and rip 395 for 4. I'm like, "God, like that's obviously not me, you know? Like
mhm,
I'm doing the
mhm,
explanation and I'm telling you how, and I'm telling you how I want it done, and then here you go, just popping this weight up like it's nothing. And again, Bugattis, man, like that they are elite already. It's just finding the small ways to fine tune it and to spit shine it every now and then
mhm,
to make it last, right? Because you want to rev that engine, man, because it sounds good and you want to see it go and you want to see it do all these great things. But if you're not taking care of it and
mhm,
truly nurturing on the back end, putting the right fuel in, making sure the recovery is correct, and making sure that they're doing things correctly when you're putting in the good work, that sucker ain't going to run.
mhm.
And or it's going to break down really quickly on you. So I think I don't even remember who, but I had a mentor that used to say the price of a Bugatti is the price of a Bugatti, right? You can't treat it like your freaking Kia
Mhm,
Sorrento and expect it to excel. And that means I can't just beat them up all the time either. You think I'm letting her pull 400 pounds like more than one time? Probably not. We're probably
mhm,
going to work it up and then take it down. And all that'll mean is that we're going to explore some deeper ranges of motion or we're going to explore a different single leg variation, right? Because unfortunately, the same athlete is poor off of one leg.
mhm.
Bilateral, phenomenal. But guess what? You don't play that kind of sport. Like it's just it doesn't work that way. So it's awesome. It's they're phenomenal human beings and
Yeah.
athletes, competitors, and that's what drives it. Is they're competing with themselves
Mhm.
and the person to their right and to their left.
100%. I think what like I get shocked about them pushing that weight is because they're volleyball, like they'll be tall athletes too. Like
Mhm.
it's hard to build that strength on those and that size too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is, but at the same time, it's and I'm not meaning to make this about me, but like I lift every day. I train
Mm.
every day. They know
Pop off
what it
again.
is that I do. Well, they know what it is that I do, and I don't I don't think I look like this huge masculine like they're you see these all these girls on Trent or on Anavar all these crazy ass
Mm,
things where they're huge and I got athletes that they're like, I don't want to look like that. And I'm like, girl, you won't. Stay away from the drugs. Right? Like I want you to be a performer. You are not a
bodybuilder.
weightlifter,
Yeah.
right? You are not a competitive weightlifter or a bodybuilder or whatever. I want you performing well, right? I want you to be a high performer. Here's what it takes. And I'll pop off and I'll go pick up the same weight. That might hurt me for days afterwards, but I'll freaking step in and go do it. And
Mhm.
for them to understand and take that and have somebody that practices what they preach or, you
Mm,
know, whatever it is and not look like the antithesis of what they want to look like, they're like, "Oh, okay, I can do this and I can trust her." And we've had the conversation because yeah, some of them they're like, "My shoulders get bigger when we're
mm.
in our off season." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Just
I
in
hope."
athletes. Yeah.
Like, I hope they do. But my promise to them is that when they're done, I have a hot girl program and I'll send it out to you, girl. You want to go hit some treadmill walks and you want to hit like you want to whatever
Some
start
bridges.
lengthening yeah, and I tell him, I'm like, "The best way to lose muscle? Stop. Just stop. It's fine. The minute
Mm,
you're done being a collegiate athlete, if you just stop training and don't eat like an asshole, you're gonna lose weight." Like, I myself lost 20 pounds after my last season of throwing, and I was like, "What is happening? Like, why am I just melting?" Because I was still training to a certain extent, but I wasn't training nearly as much.
mhm,
So I think for them, understanding that there's a reason we're trying to pull this weight.
mhm.
I want to be healthy. I want to be indestructible. When I do get hurt, because I tell them I can't prevent injury,
Mm.
nobody can, right? Like it's just impossible. But I can sure as hell mitigate it.
Navigate it.
I
Yes.
I can come to the point where when I do get hurt, I return to play faster, right?
Mhm.
Or, if something does happen, it's not the worst case scenario because I was strong enough to compensate.
Yeah.
So, for having that buy-in and the weight's not scary. It's not. It's a competition. I'm going to move that freaking weight. And I've got some of them that one of them was fighting for a year to do a chin up. just one, like fighting, training, like trying so hard. And she got it this year. And she just got down and was like, I did, like, AK, I did one, I did one. And I'm like, that's not going to make her a better volleyball player,
Mhm.
but it is sure as hell giving her confidence. And eventually, as she's training, will make her more robust. We could do one chin up, two, three, 10, right? Whatever. I had a kid that knocked out 20 this semester.
Wow.
Let's roll. Like, you don't think for a second that correlates to having a healthier shoulder?
Mhm.
Having a healthier shoulder, having a more well-structured core, having proprioception, right, to be able to have the timing, whatever it is. Oh yeah, scapular health, like let's go. There's so much that contributes to it.
Mhm.
And we have a good time. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, they're so much fun to work with and to train with and to educate along the way.
I always love this fact. And so when I was doing my dissertation, it was on the female athletes' perception of strength and conditioning coaches and like our behaviors.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like for female athletes, knowing that they have a knowledgeable coach is exactly what they need to give them 100% every single time.
Oh yeah.
But one thing that I learned is upper body speaking, pound for pound, women are stronger than men. And that I always love that because like most female athletes goals is like that single pull up. And like as soon as I tell them that fact, they're like, okay, I could fucking do it. And then like you can see that intent driving even more. Um
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. I my biggest thing for them is just you talked earlier about us knowing how we're successful at our jobs, right?
mhm,
Having KPIs, if you will, right?
mhm,
Markers that we know make us successful at our jobs. Mine is that one, the re-engagement's never an issue, that they're bought in,
mhm,
right? That's how I know I'm being successful at my job. The metrics, right? Whatever. They're going to go up, down, and sideways. Unfortunately, them having a higher approach doesn't make them better at volleyball. But for them, the confidence with which they approach the weight room,
mhm.
oh my gosh.
Key.
I got kids that walk in and they're like, I freaking like I have arrived. And
Mm,
I love that because it's never I none of the athletes I have walk in and they're like, ooh, like it's scary in here. Or oh, somebody
mhm,
they'll walk in and they'll look at other teams and be like, I could do that. Like, yeah, sure you could, like 100%, right? And so having the confidence and the wherewithal to know and to be honest, outperform other
mhm,
people. Like that's one of those things that my coaches even made a comment this last semester that was like, I don't think we faced a team that was more physical or outperformed us physically. Now, unfortunately, the volleyball is the factor
mhm,
there, right? But we would go to fifth sets and we would usually win our fifth set games, right? There were times we could last, right? They were
mhm,
fit enough. They were fit enough without ever having run, right? I don't run them. We train in a way that I'm monitoring practice loads and I'm monitoring the energy system development that I'm truly running with
mhm,
them, right? I would
mhm,
argue conditioning is done on the court in the gym in volleyball-esque ways, and my energy system development is a whole nother conversation. But having them be able to move for a long time really, really well, that lets me know I'm doing my job, right? They
mhm,
feel better. We know I'm never going to get rid of injuries, right? But having, these kids go from this crazy rehab program to, hey, I'm on a maintenance phase, or
mhm,
whatever that is, the confidence that it gives them and the courage, right? I want them when they cross those lines onto the court, that's the easiest thing they've ever done. Because I have absolutely kicked
appreciate
their
that.
ass
Yep.
the rest of the year. And
Mhm.
so it's just one of those things for me that is one of the ways that I know I'm doing my job is that
Yeah.
I've got confident athletes that are more ready to attack every day than they were the last, and they come in on fire.
Mhm. I think I said this to you, but like when I'm looking at performance in their game, I want them to last a full game and some because like I don't want them to just fucking gas out at the time that they're supposed to finish. Because what if it goes over into overtime? What if it goes into whatever? Like I want them to experience that dark side like of performance.
The dark
Like
side. Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, that's one of the most valuable lessons I learned, and it's like, first of all, you personally as a coach have to experience it. Like,
Mhm.
if you don't, you're fucking losing out a massive portion of what you can give your athletes. Because, like, in my mind, if we're doing like traditional conditioning where we run assault bikes or skiers, whatever the piece of equipment is, like I personally want to know when it starts sucking for my athletes, because then I can come back on the back end and be like, okay, you've got fucking more in there. Let's keep pushing, or whatever it is. And then in terms of game, like I want them to face their toughest opponents and in the back of their minds know that they can still keep going. Like that to me is important.
Mm. I think that a majority of what I see, and I agree with that to an extent. Their biggest, or at least what I see, their biggest opponent is themselves. Like
Mhm.
it's they get in their own way more often than not. I get in my own way, right? I overthink and I is is this good enough? Am I second guessing or getting imposter syndrome? So real,
Oh,
right? So very real.
all the time.
But coming to the point where I do train, I do try it, like,
Mhm.
there's nothing I'm gonna have them do that I haven't done myself.
Yep.
Um, and also, I'm not playing volleyball for 3 hours or however, I'm not playing volleyball for as long or as much as they're playing volleyball. So it takes, like, a scaling system for sure, and for me to think truly, "What have they been through today?" And 9 times out of 10, that's just me asking them, "Hey, how do you feel? What's going on?" And I'm also not over 6 feet tall, and half of the team is. So the demands look different, the challenge is different, and I don't necessarily have to empathize to coach you well, right?
Mhm.
I don't have to be in it with you to know what's going on, right? Our coaching, I think that this is where a lot of coaches get in trouble is they have a plan and they're like, "Well, this is what we're doing no matter
Yeah.
what."
Mhm.
Nah, like adapt it, right? Look, use your freaking eyeballs. Do you see that they're dying, right? I know you had 7 sets of whatever assault bike planned, but you see they're dying,
I
right?
know.
They're
Yeah.
dead. What is going to benefit them the most in that moment? And, that's where it comes in, I think, as a coach, that you've got to be the one to stand up and make that call, swallow your ego and swallow
Mhm.
your pride and go like, "All right, here's what we're going to do," right? And that's why there's a rarely will I give them the whole plan. Like,
Mhm.
they know what we're doing for the most part, but I got some, like, sneaky stuff hidden at the end to where if they look really good, you better believe that
Mhm.
we're gonna crank it. Like, we're gonna do something worthwhile. If they look terrible, that's built-in recovery time, man. I'm gonna lay them down. I'm gonna make them breathe a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm gonna pull them into some mobility, or maybe they need a little bit of stability train, whatever it is. Taking care of them is my first priority, and if I'm doing a good job at that, I'm gonna fill the other buckets regardless, if
Mhm.
I'm actually caring for them in a way that makes sense. And sometimes that's trash on the bike. Sometimes it means we just take a freaking a lactate bath or whatever it is. I know that there's people who tell me that's not real, but whatever. Maybe I just make them burn for a while and we do a
Mhm.
bloodbath session. Fine. It's very rare. I don't do that very often because I don't think that it has any carry over to anything. All that does is teach them to hate that bike, or teach them to hate the end of a session with you, or teach
Mhm.
them to fear the end of that session with you. Instead, we're going to look at it like an opportunity, right? It's a time to compete. Hey, this is your time to get better. Again, it was a Tuesday for us today, so we had slide board conditioning. And there are some of them just, they're like, like I hate it. It's an opportunity. The reason it's in is to build strength that you don't normally, it's a low impact
Mhm.
way to build a movement pattern in that you don't normally get to do. So we can do that, or we can go hop on the assault bikes. Which would you prefer? And they're like, slide board all day. Like, let's go. Like, I would rather feel the burn for 30 seconds on the slide board. Yeah, you would, right? Who wouldn't? So it comes into just a little bit of education, a little bit of love, a little bit of tough love, a little
Mhm.
bit of just innovation on our
Yep.
part as coaches, right? To just say, okay, here's what I want. How do I get it? Because there's not just one way. I don't just have to go run them to death to
Mhm.
get what I want out of this volume accumulation process.
I hate running. Like my fucking most hatred drill is when coaches get up and like, give me 2 laps.
Yeah, of like the shittiest run you've ever
Yeah.
seen.
For
Like,
why? For
yeah,
why?
no, for no reason, for
Like
zero
you're
reason.
warming up. Let me show you 50 other fucking ways you can do it. Oh, fucking pisses me off.
And see, then
um,
there's me, and I'm like, I also hate to run personally, but I make myself do it because that's a
mhm.
challenge in my head of like, I hate this, so I'm gonna go crush it, or I'm gonna build confidence in myself that like I'm gonna hate it less. I hate the sleds. I hate sleds. and I have started building them into my program in a way that has made me a more efficient runner, which is
Mm,
hilarious that two things that I hate are now making me better at the things that I hate. But I can't load my spine crazy anymore. I have a facet fracture and like all kinds of issues in my
yeah.
back that don't allow me to train the way I used to could type thing.
Mhm.
So we look at around and I'm gonna dance around it and I'm gonna find ways to still push myself and to I am in a phase of my life where I'm just like trying to build every single ounce of my work capacity out until I can't anymore. And I
Mhm.
haven't broken myself yet. And I'm up to absurd amounts of volumes in my day to day life. And that's what I want to do to function forever. I want to be I want to be freaking 90 years
Mhm.
old and in climbing mountains and stuff. So
Yeah.
and that's something that I tell the athletes, right? I'm not looking for you to be good now. I'm looking for you to be good in the long run. Like
Mhm.
longevity in your
Longevity.
sport
Yes.
and in your life and in your day-to-day is the best gift that I can give you.
Mhm.
So be good, right? Be good now and execute the simple things savagely well, and you will earn the right to progress through the program. Don't, and we'll stay right here and we'll do
Mhm.
this. Well, this baseline stuff is easy peasy for me. Volume accumulation can happen anywhere, right? Let's do it. But if you want to earn the right to progress and you want to earn the right to do these other things, let's do the baseline stuff savagely well and always be able to come back to it.
What would be some resources that you would recommend coaches read into?
I am not going to sit here and lie to you. Reading within like coaching material, not something I've done a ton of. I've done a lot of good like of my own research in other ways. Dr. Stacy Sims has written books about women like training through, peri and postmenopause, little things like that. um, Good energy, like Dr. Peter Attia's books. Like there are a lot of things that again we talked about longevity. Um, there are a lot of things. Outlive is Dr. Peter Attia's book. There's a lot of information in all of that, but how applicable is it
Mm,
in the high performance settings. So I kind of look to my people, honestly, and I love site visits. I love talking to people.
mm.
I love talking shop. Donnie Mabe is one of my like go-to people. He just happens to have two books out now on leadership. The two buckets of leadership is his one that he has out now, his newest one. Um,
What was that? Two.
the two buckets of leadership, Donnie Mabe. But I think that when it comes to the practical application thing, get with people. Like
Mhm.
the books, I am so, and maybe it's the dyslexic in me speaking. Um, I detest reading and then trying to make it fit what I want. So my go-to there is to make site visits, to make calls, to make time for people, to Zoom, to FaceTime, to whatever it is, and ask those questions. Like my one of my closest friends, Melissa Schmitz, she's at Texas, University of Texas. I'll go to Austin and we'll just have a weekend like in the gym and at the garage, like in her garage gym, and we'll go up to UT and just be like, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And we'll start just
Mm,
training. And there are so many opportunities like that that we as coaches silo ourselves and we get into the books and we get into, I'm going to listen to this book and I'm going to listen to this podcast and I'm going to read this and there's great and I'm never going to take away from it. I think there's so much value in it. I am reading right now a book on dopamine. Like, I've just finished Dopamine Nation not too long ago, and that kind of got me down, like, the altered traits and all these other things that I want to look at from like a brain health perspective because that's important to me. And yep, Dopamine Nation, there it is. Um, but that's one that I read not too long ago that I also really enjoyed. Um, and now I'm reading a book called Genius Foods. And again, going into when you work so much on all these,
mhm.
physical properties, and then you start diving into really, truly just me, right? How can I make myself better? How can I fuel my body more efficiently? How can I make my brain work the best when it comes to our like neurological defenses or what we're putting in our bodies or whatever, how I'm supplementing, how I'm sleeping, so many things, right? And the value of sleep. And
Mhm.
helping the athletes understand that all of those things matter to them too, to make them perform at a high level. Um, there are the podcasts, Diary of a CEO and Andrew Huberman's podcast, the Huberman Lab, and Andy Galpin's podcast, Perform, right? Like there are all these things that I love listening to stuff like that, and to be able to just hear people's different perspectives and opinions and, all of those things. But when it comes to implementation and doing things, I want to go. I want to see. I want to
I want to do.
go talk
Yeah.
to other coaches. I want practical application. I don't want your principles. I want your methods. I
Mm,
want you to walk me through it. Why has it worked for you? Will it work for me? Right? It probably, I'm sorry, I'm here for all the books, right? Like, but reading a book and then practically implementing that information that you've just learned,
mhm,
rarely has that ever worked for me, right? It's been a thing where I now have to adapt that principle in method to fit what I'm doing, what I want, how I want it, and adapt it for the athletes that I have.
mhm.
Because reading all these studies on, it's a 16-week study on a population that
Isn't
doesn't
yours.
actually
Yeah.
exist. Yeah, like they're this crazy, crazy population. There's value in it, and I think we can learn from it, but we also have to understand that that's a siloed situation.
Mm.
So that's kind of where I go, and I know that's probably not the answer that most people want to have, but that's kind of
No,
where I
I agree, and the reason why, like, so I've started doing webinars, and I eventually want to go into like the clinic sense, um, because I feel the same frustration when I'm watching or reading something, and that practical application isn't there,
Mhm.
and I'm like, well, you've just wasted 2,000 words.
Yeah. Or when somebody
So,
for me, it's like you go watch a presentation or you go to a
mm,
conference and you have somebody up there that's in the private sector, and they're like they'll lead with, "Yeah, this probably won't work if you're having to work with 20 student athletes." And I'm like, "Bye." Like, I don't well, what? Like, I want practical application
mhm,
that I can implement, and it's one of those things that it takes talking to people
yes,
who are in it and
I
who know it.
I still to this day cannot find it, and it's driving me so insane that the NSCA is actually helping me trying to track this video down. But
Amazing.
the so NSCA obviously has their yearly conference, and loads of speakers attend and they present. One guy presented, and at the end, like, you know how like usually the presenters will list down all the references, like which paper they got, which book they used, whatever. But
Sure.
this presenter had the names of people that he spoke to and he's watched or he's like have
Yeah.
mentored him. And like that to me at the time was really frustrating because I was like, well, where's the proof for that? But then as I go through this industry and as I talk to more coaches, have more experiences, I'm just like, I mean, he's right.
Yeah,
He is
damn, yeah.
fucking right.
Yeah, exactly. I can reference like I can go, scientific study whatever all day long, and you can make, and I'm not taking away from any of those things, right? I think that whether you're using force plate data or normative data and all those things, and there's value in it. But if I can say like, hey, here are those are in my opinion those are principles. But if I can take how do I get there? Are there multiple methods to get to that point? Or, is there a best way? Is
Mhm,
there a best way for me? Because I think that those are different, right? I'll use Donnie, right? If I'm having issues and I call him and he tells me the way that he would do it, well, that man is a licensed massage therapist. I can't do everything that he can do. So then I have to go on the back end and go, okay, well, here are the things that he did. How do I make that work for me? Right? Do I do a little more soft tissue work? Do I send them to athletic medicine and have them do a little bit more dry needling? Do I implement voodoo flossing? Right? What do I do on this side to make it work? And it's worked for me, right? Like that's been one of those things that I've had a good amount of success with is creating connections
mhm,
and just using those connections, right? Not just being like, "Oh yeah, I know so and so," and go name drop. Who cares? Understand that when you create the good relationship
mhm,
and you think of that person and you're like, "Ooh, hey, they're really good at this." Call them, text them,
mhm.
DM them, whatever, and just be like, "Hey, I saw you do this." Whatever. I don't post a ton of content, so I just don't care to. I don't know. I have no desire to be out there like that. But if I post something and somebody's like, "Hey," or like my competitions, right? Whatever. Sometimes I'll pop that stuff up there and somebody's like, "Hey, did you do this, this, this? Does this work?" I will share literally everything. I'll send
Mhm.
you my freaking program. I did. I pulled up the Excel
Yeah.
when we were talking the first time. I'll show you exactly what I do because it's up to you to
Mhm.
make it work for you. You can have all my stuff. I don't care. I'll show you exactly what I do. I'll show you how I do it. I'll show you the results I get because of it. Go ahead. You can run my exact program if you want. I don't care. But you're not going to be able to run my program because you're not me.
Mhm.
And that's not me being an asshole. That's just real. You're not me. You're not going to coach it the same. You're not going to implement it the same with certain
Mhm.
athletes. You're not going to make the same adaptations I make. So feel free, run with it.
Mhm.
Like, I'm happy to tell you what I've done.
I always like to study people's programs, and it's it's weird because the line of questioning that you then start asking coaches is so fucking different because of different things that you see. Like when I was at UW, one of my biggest things was like I just sat down with all the programs and I tried to again go through the needs analysis, whatever, like that was already fucking programmed and I know what their needs and I know like what the fuck's going on, but it's like what nuances is happening that normal people aren't thinking about. And
True.
like one of Coach Mac's thing is he works off a tier system where there's 4 to 5 exercises in each tier. There's 5 tiers. So that to me, I'm like, okay, let's look at the sport. 4 quarters in football, extra or like overtime is a fifth quarter. 4 exercises each take like each set takes like 15 minutes to run, and then like each exercise like roughly 15 to a minute. So like everything is built in with already like that perspective. And I asked him about it. I was like, yeah, nailed it. But I'm still never going to run that program the same way as he did.
Sure.
So like
And I think
yeah, yeah, go.
I think that again, it speaks back to the specificity of your program. Why
Hmm.
does your program work? Why do I only run 6 exercises in a day like today and still see phenomenal results? You know, what are we changing? What are we
Hmm.
progressing? How are we it's nonlinear, I'll tell you that right now, and it's complex. But when you're filling certain buckets and you're looking to achieve something different on the day, maybe different next week, right? Next week, it might
Hmm.
be the same day with a different demand. And when you tell the athletes that and they execute, good things
Yeah.
happen.
Job done. Yeah. What would be some advice that you would give new strength coaches or coaches coming into this industry?
Get some hours. Understand that the biggest thing in the collegiate setting, or the biggest issue I want to say, is this looming threat of burnout.
Hmm.
Um, that's going to be my next conversation, presentation, whatever. Dr. Andy Gillum and I have put together a set of understanding what burnout actually is, and understanding that not everybody's cut out to do what
Hmm.
we do. I myself have come close several times to exiting the field, not because I don't love it, but because I wasn't in a good scenario, or I wasn't in a good situation, or I didn't know how to set my boundaries, or I didn't know, whatever. There's things you just don't know. So with the interns that I've got now, it's tough, but you got to be willing to put in some hours.
Hmm.
There's, the adage of 10,000 hours to be elite at something. Well, as coaches, where the hell do we get those? Coaching, right? Like, I'm not getting better at being a coach when I'm programming, or I'm not getting better at my actual job, right? When I'm doing those things. I would argue that I am getting better when I'm training. I would argue that I'm getting better when I'm doing anything in regards to communication with an athlete or a coach or whatever. Um, and then I make myself valuable in other ways by understanding the data, understanding the load management, all that stuff. So, interns and new coaches and people who are just getting started in the field understand that the first few years, while you, and I quote, earn your stripes, yeah, there's some long ass days. Like, even now, I've been in it for a decade, and there's still long ass days, right? I still got the 15, 16-hour days every now and then. But I know how to take care of myself. I go home every day at lunch, regardless of what's going on the day, right? I'm going to go home and I'm going to go walk my dogs, or I'm going to go eat lunch at home. I make time to train, even if it's just 20 minutes. One thing that I think new coaches especially need to be really good at is being present with different teams and being able to be a chameleon in
Hmm.
those settings. Speak the language, understand the demands of the game, but being able to speak to the athletes and the coaches not the same way that you would the next team that comes in, right? We don't speak to swim and dive the same way we speak to the volleyball players. We don't speak to the volleyball players the same way we speak to the tennis players. They're from different coaching backgrounds, they're from different right? There's all kinds of different things that go into that. So being an incredible person with humans in general, and then meeting people, right?
Mhm.
Reaching out, making connections. You have to be good at that. And I'm not saying you have to be that person that goes and presents at conference, right? That's not what I mean. You don't have to be this like unshakable socialite. That's not what I mean. But you do need to get really good at asking for help and asking questions to create understanding in yourself. Not just asking questions to ask questions, right?
Mhm.
That's I would argue that that's one of the worst things. Like when somebody says, "Do you have any questions?" and they're like, no, no, no. If you have a question, ask it. If you don't, walk on,
Yeah.
right? Forget about it. Don't overcomplicate things. But I think that once you learn that and once you start understanding and you've seen some stuff, right? If
Mhm.
you're in football, if you're in football, I recommend you go watch throws. I recommend you head to a track near you and go watch the throwers lift, right? I would say that, go experience other things. Go see some wrestlers train. I love parallel training styles,
Mhm.
right? Wrestling, working alongside football, working alongside like throwers and because yeah, no, the football players aren't going to train like the baseball players. But there's sure as shit some commonalities in some other
Mhm.
areas. So the more exposure you get as a coach, and when I can piece those things together, for me, it's overhead and rotational sports, right? Volleyball, tennis, softball, baseball. Those are things that I have a niche perspective in. But then I'm also very fortunate to have worked with soccer and gymnastics and golf and swimming and diving. And there are just these things that have come into play. And my background is in track and field.
Mhm.
So all of those things bleed into experience and implementation of methods
Yep.
that may not be totally normal within that sport, but can see phenomenal training outcomes just because you know how to utilize it. Oh, I know how to implement this method. Boom, I'm going to do it and it might be a little weird or it might be a little, out of place here, but when you understand how to manipulate those things to get what you
Yes.
want, you can start predicting outcomes. And you and I had that conversation offline too. I can predict when we're going to be jumping our highest and I can get us ready to do that. Why? Because I've learned a lot about load management. I've learned a lot about timing. I've learned a lot about rest recovery cycles. I've learned a lot about what, how I'm stimulating them, where, why, load management, etc. So I think that as a young coach, I was very blessed to have those mentors in the field where I was getting exposure with all kinds soccer, field hockey, water polo, baseball, tennis, golf, track and field. Like there wasn't much I didn't have exposure to. And for every other young coach, when you get on fire for that and you understand that the
Mhm.
collegiate lifestyle is psycho, it is, it's crazy.
Mhm.
But if you like that, and then once you are a little bit more well established, like I'm very fortunate to be at a place where I can create great boundaries and I can still do my job at the highest level and take care of myself in order to do that job at the highest level.
Mhm.
You get to a point, and I hate saying it this way, but it's true. You earn that right,
Yep.
right? You don't get to experience one internship at one high level institution and walk into a Division 1 Power 4 job. Sorry, like
Mhm.
you don't get to do that. There's a point at which you gotta know. You gotta know the way things work. You gotta understand the fine nuances, how to speak to coaches, how to get across what you want, how to take some lumps every now and then and be like, yeah, that was my fault, or how to own something that wasn't your fault. There are those small nuances that you have to learn running departments, running interns, right? Managing other people, working the weight room schedule, right? There's
Mhm.
so many things that you have to understand in order to be successful in this field, and it just takes time. So,
Yep.
to the young coaches and interns, buckle up
Yep.
because if you want to be in it, it just takes a little bit. And
Uh-huh.
but I'm gonna tell you what, I don't think there's a better job than the one that I have. I mean, I truly believe that I have the best job, and I love getting to communicate with the people I get to communicate with and connect with, whether it's in the sports science side or, in admin or the coaches or the athletes or other strength coaches or whatever. Like, I have the coolest job. And
Mhm.
the longer I'm in it, the more I'm like, man, like, I want to be on the floor doing this stuff forever, but I know that's not going to make me great and successful in this field. And maybe I walk away from it one day and go open a coffee shop and tell everybody bye forever. And that's fine. I'll still have my community somewhere. But
Mhm.
being entrenched in it and being able to educate other people, my ultimate goal is to leave this field better than I found it.
Yep.
That means
We spoke
coaches get
about this
paid.
as well. Yep.
Yeah, that means coaches get paid more.
Mhm.
It needs to be a thing, right?
Yes.
That has to happen. That, you don't work absurd hours. Like there have to be boundaries that we're able to set verbally that
Mhm.
says, "Hey, creating time audits for ourselves and taking apart our day and saying, "Hey, I have time for this, this, and this because here's my schedule. I'm going to lay it out. That 20 minutes right there is for me.
Mhm.
I'm gonna take that time." And I did. I did that right before our podcast. Volleyball's lift ended at 10. I knew I had about 30 minutes before I need to get ready for this podcast. So I got a very short training session in.
Mhm.
Great. That's me taking care of me and making it a priority. I had interns come up to me that time that wanted to ask me questions. I said, nope, not now. Write your questions down. We'll talk about them later. And so it's one of those things that it's prioritizing needs, just like we would for athletes, for ourselves as coaches.
Mhm.
And that keeps me better. It keeps me available and not burn out because I still have a massive amount of accomplishment in my heart. Like I have a big place. Well, I want to say a big space in my heart for this field, but for a while, there was a time at which I was like, "I don't wanna do this."
Mhm.
And it ended up just being a situational thing. And now when you get into a situation that's right for you, it's what you wanna do, it's where you wanna be, it's who you wanna be with, there is power in that community, and I think that's the
Mhm.
coolest part, is when you can entrench yourself in a community and truly just grow in it and grow with it,
Mhm.
it's awesome.
I think the connection part, and again, I knew very early on how dialed in your program was, because when we were starting to speak about like just talking shop, you're like boom, 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 boom. I was like,
Yeah.
fucking yeah, and the thing I said to you was like, your program is fucking dialed, and I can tell. And you're like, yep.
Dude, and but you know how long that took me to learn how
Hmm.
to do that? Like, that's one of those things that you learn who you are, how you structure things, the best ways to communicate by doing,
Hmm.
right? So, just the fact that I've been at different institutions, I've been at some phenomenal institutions. I've been under great leadership. I've been under crap leadership. I've been around people I love that make me better. I've been around people that tolerate my existence. Like, and all of that goes to, I used to see somebody asking me questions about my program as an attack. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and panic and be like, "Oh no," like they see something that's wrong and it's not right. Bullshit. Like get say it with your
Get
chest.
behind them.
If
Yep.
I do something, yeah, and that's part of why, like, again, I have no problem telling you exactly what I do, when I do it, how I do it, the way I implement it, and for why.
Hmm.
Because and then you don't have to agree with me. That's okay,
We can
right?
talk
You could
about
be
it
like,
though.
"No, I've never
Yep.
done that way." And that's one of those things where, and I think you and I talked about this the first time that we spoke, is that wrong is very subjective, right, for what we're doing. I do believe there's a wrong way. I do. I do believe
Yeah.
there's a wrong way to do things, but just because I wouldn't do something the same way someone else does, doesn't mean I can't learn from it.
Hmm.
Doesn't make it inherently wrong. And whether you're looking at like a holistic approach or an incredibly scientific approach or something in between or whatever, the whole like look good, feel good, play good concept, in my opinion, your brain lies to you.
Hmm.
You might feel like absolute dog water and jump out the roof that day, right? Like you might jump like an absolute phenom because your brain is just, you're just discombobulated, right? Whatever. And then again, I look at it again. I'm like, there's so much value in feeling good and about the way you look and whatever. So you can learn something from everybody. And when I speak about what I do and how I do it, it's just from experience and the
Hmm.
confidence that comes along with that. And when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, have you thought about this? Because I saw this and this in your program and I don't know." I can look at them and go, "Oh, no, I haven't. No, I haven't thought about that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention." Does it mean I'm going to change it? No, I might. I very well might. But having those hard conversations and being coachable myself as a coach is something that's so valuable. And
Hmm.
people love to have those conversations with you. Like, I had a person try and like keyhole me when I was speaking at an event at NSCA coaches. And when we were just talking about simple mobility routines, he's like, "Well, have you ever done PNF and FRC and all these things?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Yeah, I've done them and I don't like them. I don't do them anymore." And they're like, "How could you not like them?" And I'm like, "Golly, it takes so much time." And like, I can write the
Hmm.
mobility routines up on these simple things up and have my athletes do them and know they're gonna do them. right?
Yep.
And so sometimes it's just in the simplicity of the thing.
Mhm.
But for me, and I think we talked about this as well, minimally effective dosages are great. But capacity and raising the ceiling and pushing the floor too, and making sure they can tolerate a lot of things, a lot of different things, is also very important.
Mhm.
So piecing in everything that we know in the ways that make sense to us, and then just owning it. Own your process. If something doesn't work, change it.
Yep.
Like, it can be that simple. But the personal attacks and stuff and all that, I
Mhm.
don't care. Think what you want
Um,
about what you do.
one of the biggest learning curves, and I used to think the same as you, is like that's an attack on my program.
Yeah,
But I got there was a couple internships that I had to defend each program that I wrote,
yeah,
and those were the most beneficial internships I've ever been a part of, because it's like,
100%.
don't be married to the system. Like, if you've got a system, it can fucking change.
Yeah.
Like, but
Systems,
just
exercises, whatever.
the fact that if you make a program and you program whatever it is, but you can justify, who the fuck can tell you you're wrong?
Right. I mean, a lot of people, turns out.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people
Oh
will tell you you're
yeah.
wrong, but
Yeah. Yeah.
at the end of the day, my my results, if you wanna look at that,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
the results speak for themselves, and the coaches are, like, really happy with what's going on, so we're good. I feel fine
Yep.
about it, right? Like, if there's a better way, I wanna seek it out. That's how I feel. If
Mhm.
there's a better way, absolutely, I wanna seek that out. I wanna make it fit, right? I wanna make adjustments that are pertinent, but it also goes back to, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like,
Yep.
if there's nothing wrong or inherently glaring, chill. Like, you don't always have like, I'm so skeptical of people who are, like, telling me they're constantly reinventing the wheel.
We
Are
spoke about this
you?
too.
Because like,
Yep.
I don't think so. I don't think you are. I think that you think you are, and that's cool. Good
Mhm.
job. Like, whatever you gotta do. But I think that if you're just again, if we can do the basic stuff savagely well and progress or regress if and when necessary, great. I think we can see some awesome things. And again, you and I talked about it offline, but keeping it so simple. Like, I that is the biggest thing that you don't have to use all these fancy implementations of
Mhm.
the same exercise, whatever, like, I'll use accommodating resistance. I think accommodating resistance for athletes at this level is useless. They can't do the weight that you've given them, so now we're adding chains and bands and all this stuff. Chill out. Like, they're not at that training age yet, right? You have a freshman that's using chains. Why? Like, they haven't even mastered this movement
Mhm.
yet. What in the world are we doing? They can't do a 3-second controlled eccentric tempo.
That's a
What
good
are
point.
what are
Yeah.
we doing? Right? Accommodating resistance is you're not even there yet. Will you see good things? Sure. 100%, absolutely. But, what's the give and take there? What are we doing? And can we get the most out of the simple stuff before we try and level them up
Mhm.
again? And, that's just a total aside from
Yeah.
one of the things that I think about a lot.
I also think, to piggyback off your time under the industry, you also have to have time under the bar. I think
Yeah.
that's a very important thing that you need as a coach. Like, I graduated with people, again, 4 year degree, that couldn't squat, they couldn't bench press, they couldn't deadlift, they couldn't clean, they couldn't snatch. Like, I'm not saying that you have to be fucking amazing at them. At least know how to coach them and teach them.
Yeah, you should probably be able to do a demo. And
Yeah.
that's where I come to on that too, is that I have a hard time I have a really hard time judging other strength coaches by appearance, and it is my favorite thing to walk around conferences and be like, "No way." Like, I'm that asshole that, like, I do think that it is incredibly important, not only that we practice what we preach, but that, like, if I had to jump in and do it and demo this,
Mm.
I should be able to do it, and my back is broken, and I can, like, that's how I
Mhm.
would think. I'm like, if
Yeah.
I'm broken and I can still do these movements and find ways to do them correctly, like, we should all be so lucky and take care of ourselves so much to that extent. And that being said, I've also known coaches who don't train anymore, right? They've been in the industry for 20 plus years and they don't train anymore, but they communicate so
Mhm.
beautifully that you couldn't get it wrong, right? Their words, they're painting a perfect picture for you with their words, they're coaching you through positionally. And those people, like, listen up. Like, when they speak, like,
Yeah.
I'm silent, right? I'm listening to everything that they're saying because no, they don't train anymore because they physically can't or they've had an injury or whatever it is, but they are still able to coach so proficiently that
It's
that's where
simple.
their,
Yeah.
their value is. Yeah. And so it's kind of cool and it makes it again like it makes all of us the asshole when we're like, well, I can do, I'm going to go do this and I can do this and I'm physically capable of doing all these things. But I think that our vocabulary and our coaching
Mhm.
vocabulary, if you will, is just as valuable as our physical assets when it comes to actually how I'm able to offset, sure,
Mhm.
offload a program to athletes.
100%. Um, I really do appreciate you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
It's a fucking great time, and I know that we'll probably have some questions and some other ways that we can have more podcast episodes because like I fucking love doing this. But like when people are so interested in finding different ways of doing things better and still progressing their athletes the best that they can, I always love to go back and speak to them again. So I do
Heck
really
yeah.
appreciate you for coming on.
Absolutely. Hit me at the end of that off season. I'll let you know how the changes we made went.
Nice. I probably will. I will bother you again.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
Perfect. Peace.